I'm a Ford Coyote tuner for Lund Racing. I was just posting on Facebook, Instagram forever, back in like 2013, 2012. That caught some traction. And the reason it caught traction is because I guess some of the stuff I was saying was true. Meaning that some tuners steal tunes and just add timing. Chevy and Ford have a friendly rivalry. We don't want to punch guys. We just say your LS sucks because it sucks. One cam generally does not give you awesome torque and awesome horsepower. This has both.
What is the greatest Mustang of all time?
Any generation?
Any generation, you could pick one.
A centrifugal 10R80 ESS car is a 4-second 60 to 130 easily. Man, don't sleep on them because you might lose to a GT. If you're gonna say anything was a precursor to the Hellcat, was the Cobra.
Why do you think those guys like Midnight, they have like some of the fastest trucks?
B58, S58 guys, it's like wild. It goes 990 and they lose their fucking minds. I live in the world of Lund Racing where we play in a safe sandbox. People say, oh, you're not gonna get after it. I'm sorry, we won Street Fighter with a stock computer and a 6R80. We did okay.
What happened between Ken and Lund?
Look.
Cop some merch, guys. Hoodies are out. Hit the link below to cop your merch or head over to streetalpha.co to cop your hoodie. I gotta go back to editing. Peace. Welcome back to another episode of the Street Alpha Podcast. I am your host, Tukes, and we have another one in Florida. We're back in Florida. I'm telling you guys, I love it out here. But we have a legend today. I can confidently say we have a legend in the building on the Street Alpha Podcast. So we came here all the way to West Palm to interview the legend, Alex Flores, tuner for Lund Racing.
For Lund Racing.
Let's clap it up for Alex Flores.
Thank you.
Well, should we say Alejandro?
Nah, that's just too
I see people commenting formal. And they say, oh, you should get Alejandro.
That's a government name. You could just, Alex is good and Alex, we're good. Alex. So now that you've been in Florida for a little bit, how do you like it? Tell the people how it smells in Florida.
As soon as I got out those doors, when I got here on the train, I was like, this is the smell. Well, it's kind of weird to say, but like.
It is.
That air is just like, I didn't get that in Orlando this time though. Like only here. Right? I don't know if it's the water in the air, I don't know what it is. I can't explain it. But it is
a different vibe down here than other parts in Florida. Yeah. And I tell people you only experience it when you're here.
When you're here.
I can't tell you how it is once you're here. And you said it. Once you got off of it, you said it smells good down here.
I literally said that before. I probably said that before I even said hey to you.
Right. I was like, it smells good down here. I was like,
so good.
Yes, it does.
This is dope. This area is like beautiful. We're right by the airport. So also, guys, there's some bagpipe action going on back there.
Yeah, there's a band that does some like events and they do like bagpipe music and they're practicing in the parking lot. So if you hear some bagpipe music,
exactly. So you guys are gonna be able to get a lot of information out of the Mustang Coyote platform, right?
Correct.
So we spoke before about some things, some of the differences between the Gen 1, 2, and 3. I had an episode before where it was kind of explained to me, but now that you're, obviously here to kind of tell the story and how everything came together, the differences between the platforms, how much power you can make, different applications and so on.
Right.
We can get those questions answered. So if you guys have seen on Instagram, I put up the post. I'm going to try my best to answer those questions later on, or Alex will answer those questions. I'll ask them for you guys. So before that, I think there's a little bit of a misconception with some people about what your relationship is with Lund.
Interesting.
So can you explain how you got affiliated with John?
Okay, well, I'll give you the condensed version because that can take a long time. So I tuned for Lund Racing. So I'm basically one of 4 tuners that they employ.
Okay.
The lead tuner is John Lund Jr. The owner is John Lund Sr. and Cheryl, his wife.
Okay.
So we basically just hammer out calibrations for late model Mustangs, F-150, some Explorers, some Raptors, but we typically keep the poor people cars to poor people, like old GT500s, 2 valves, 3 valves. I say that as a joke, but that market is difficult to tune remotely because the computer doesn't have wide bands. Coyotes all have wide bands from the factory, and it makes it a lot easier for us to tune. So the way I got into tuning for lack of a better word, is I was just shit posting on Facebook, Instagram forever, back in like 2013, 2012, when I was bored up north. You know, you're a New York guy. So when you're up there bored and it's snowing, it's cold, it's winter, it's miserable, especially right now, like January into February. So that caught some traction. And the reason it caught traction is because I guess some of the stuff I was saying was true.
Right.
Meaning that some tuners steal tunes and just add timing and this and this and that. But I was just shit posting. I didn't know that. So because that kind of got noticed, actual tuners in the industry started going, hey, who is this guy? He might know some stuff. To the point where people thought I was tuning. And I was like, no, I was a millwright. I was a heavy equipment mechanic, just, wrenching all day. Come home and shit post. So fast forward, I ended up moving to Houston, and there I met a bunch of people in the racing industry, and that's where I met Lund Racing at a Texas Mile event. Went to the Texas Mile, we talked. They thought I was somebody in the industry, and I'm like, I'm just some idiot, but we got along. We were like super. You ever meet somebody and like actually the way we talk, we just get each other. That's how I was a senior. He was like an older brother, and we talked about racing, and he's like, hey, if you ever want a job in tuning. Like, think about it. I was talking shit on tuning. And then he says 3 years later, if you ever want a job in tuning, I'll teach you. And I was like, what the fuck? Okay, so what do I have to do?
Right.
He's like, got to move to Florida. And I was like, let's go. Okay. So a couple of weeks later, I was in Florida. I was in West Palm Beach, Florida. I drove from Houston here, and just the smell of the air, I came in December. So it was just beautiful.
That's the best time to come.
Beautiful down here. So I was like, okay, I'm in. So then, long story short, I basically cemented myself as a tuner. Now, that doesn't mean that I am this kind of guy that can tune a diesel truck, a Golf, a BMW. No. I specifically tune for a specialized platform. And I tune the way Lund Racing wants me to tune, right? They have a sandbox. I play within their sandbox.
Right.
I don't go outside of that sandbox. And that's my job. I don't care to, become the best tuner or anything like that. I just know enough to know when I see someone talking out of their ass, and I do okay calling them out on it, especially on this platform. But I do own a ZR1, and I tune that. So I dabble in other platforms that are just my personal platforms. But I definitely don't go out of my way to be like, I'm the best tuner for, BMW or GT. No, I'm a Ford Coyote tuner for Lund Racing, and that's where I want to stay.
That's it.
That's it.
So how did you develop the knowledge to understand the basics of how a motor works? Because you were giving out a lot of information on YouTube years back. So did you go to school at all, or did you just played with motors and you figured it out yourself? Because you have to have a certain kind of like mindset to understand how, a motor takes air in, fuel, all that stuff. Right. And it kind of trickles down to other platforms as well. Obviously, it's all the same shit.
It's an air pump.
Yeah.
So when you, as a kid, you're curious about how things come apart. So the moment you get a toy, you're going to take it apart. You're basically breaking it. And that's when I found out really quickly, anyone can take anything apart. Putting it together is a completely different story. My father worked for a automotive basic repair shop, starters, alternators, very basic stuff. And as a kid after school, I'd go there and just hang out and listen to cars. And once in a while he'd say, pull that car out, bring that car in, move them around. And as a kid, you go, oh my God, that's so cool. So my father, I remember most of my knowledge is from my father on the automotive side. He would sit there and explain to you how a combustion event happens. And the best thing he did was explain it to you like you're a absolute dumbass. He says, compression stroke, all this, and the valve comes down, and then the gas, and then the explosion happens. And he goes, it's controlled little explosions in a combustion chamber in unison, turning a big flywheel, turning a clutch, turning a drive shaft, turning axles, and I was like, whoa, as a little kid, he trickled it down like that. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. So my first car was a Fox body, an 86 Fox body. So I was 16 years old, racing a Fox on the street, 14-second junk cars. But I thought it was the quickest thing on the planet. And eventually I got down to live in the low 11s in the 90s, which was fast back then. And then I kind of took a hiatus. You live life, you do all that stuff. And then you try to put your toes back into the water. Unfortunately, I put my toe back into the water during the 3-valve era. The 3-valve, biggest hunk of crap junk car ever built, the 05 to 10 Ford Mustang. I bypassed Cobra. I bypassed 2 valves. I bypassed SNs. I bypassed all that stuff. I went right to 05 Mustang. And I thought it was the coolest thing on the planet. Then I learned enough to make me go, okay, this thing's a piece of shit, because a Mazda Speed 3 with a downpipe and a tune, it took everything I could do to beat him by a fender. And I was like, bro, fuck this car. Like, fuck this car. A V8 3-valve almost getting beat by a Mazda Speed 3. So I'm like, okay, either the Japanese market is catching up or Ford is just trash right now. It was the latter. Ford is both, because the Japanese market really took off in the early 2010 and up. It just ramped up like stupid, right? And again, I'm not in that world, but I noticed. I'm like, legit stuff. So I went to the dealership like the next day, and I was like, it was 2011 at that time.
Right.
And the Coyote Mustang had come out. And I was like, what's all this about? And I talked to the salesperson, and he's like, well, it has 420 horsepower. And I was like, it has 100 more horsepower than my 3-valve? He's like, yeah, it's got a 6-speed. It's got 373s. It's got twin independent variable cam timing. And I knew exactly what that was.
Yeah.
Because once my father would explain camshafts to me, I go, twin independent? You're telling me the intake cam moves separate phasing wise from the exhaust cam? He goes, yes. And it has adaptive octane logic, meaning has knock sensors. So you can run 87 octane and the car goes, that's 87 octane. I'm not going to give you that much timing. And then when it goes, ooh, that smells like 93, it gives you more timing.
Yeah.
I was hooked. I was like, oh my God. So I drove the car. I thought it was kind of a dog. I was like, nah, it's not that quick. The guy goes, did you turn off traction control? I go, no. We go back out, turn off advanced track. You have to hold the button down with the brake on the pedal for 7 seconds, and it disables everything. I literally did what they do at meets, almost run into a crowd. I was like, oh, this thing's wild, because the 1-2 shift blazed the tire, and I'm like, this thing is serious. So then the moment that happened, I had to know everything about this car.
Right.
So I'm looking at mods, and I did all the dumb things dumb kids did back in the day. Muffler delete, Bama tuning. Don't get me started on that stuff. I did all the prerequisites that Coyote guys do. And then I started just kind of like, based on my previous knowledge, started noticing that there's certain gimmicky things that won't work. There's certain things that should work. More octane is always better. A tune is not going to give you 50 horsepower NA. That's just stupid talk. You need to make the air pump better. You need to basically make this take in a lot more air and get rid of the air more efficiently. And the tune will compensate for that. So I knew that. So that's when I started shitposting. Oh, a tune picked up 80 horsepower. Shut up, bro. Please stop. So what they started doing is in the early Coyote era is telling you the power under the curve. It's a bullshit way of saying the separation between the, not the peak, under the curve. So let's say, for instance, if I make a hit in 3rd gear, and the graph comes like that, then I make a hit in 5th gear. Now the rollers are going faster, so the power under the curve looks more exaggerated. The first run versus the second run. So they go, power under the curve is up 50. And I'm like, okay, but it's a skewed number. So once I started shitposting stuff like that, I think people caught on. And I had a heavy mechanical background, not only with my father, but I was a millwright. A millwright is a heavy equipment mechanic. So if you need somebody to work at a power plant that makes electricity, I'd be the guy reinstalling, rebuilding the turbines, the feed water pumps, the condenser pumps. Everything is pumps. So once my world is pumps, this was super easy. That's why I still have some fuel system theories that some people still spout to this day that I think are bullshit, but I'm not going to go out there and pop off and start telling people they don't know anything. But my background is as a millwright, and just having a background in mechanical curiosity kind of led me to have this engine, be, in my opinion, pretty perfect. The Cobra engine is great for its day. The GT500 engines are great, but you can make the most power, and the power potential from the Coyote, as you can see right now, is pretty ridiculous what you can do with it with a Coyote motor.
Do you think that there was a post that it just came up when you said Cobra, the Mercedes motor? James RSP mentioned that was a precursor to the Hellcat motor, Hemi. There was people in the comments saying the Terminator Cobra motor was a precursor to the Hellcat motor now with the Hemis. Is there any correlation there?
So what year did that Mercedes come out?
I think 2005.
So the Cobra was an 03, 04. The Terminator Cobra with the Eaton supercharger was in 2003, 2004. Ford said it was 380 horsepower. Bullshit. That bitch was like 4 something. If you're going to say anything was a precursor to the Hellcat, was the Cobra. The whining it made, the whining noise. Like, what are Hellcats known for? Sideshows, slamming into people, getting stolen. And
I said right, like,
You're right, Alex.
Yeah, right.
So basically, they're known for the whine and burnouts. Cobras were that. They were the whiny burnout. Like, you see some of these snake bite video. The Cobra guys know exactly what I'm talking about. There was a snake bite video. The guy's like doing the most ridiculous burnout. First, second, third, sideways, comes back, and it's whining. It's got a Kenny Bell, like 2-liter blower, making all these great noises. That was the precursor, in my opinion, to what Hellcat people do now. The whining, the burnouts, the noise. The Cobra was the original bruiser. The Cobra had manly rods, badass pistons, 6-bolt mains, like dumb stuff. But the problem with that was, I just think there was a cylinder head design that wasn't great. You needed cams. You don't need cams. I guys are going to start yelling. But I think to make it robust, it needed a decent amount of work.
Okay.
In comparison to Coyote, the Coyote was an evolution of the overhead cam stuff. Ford started dabbling with overhead cam stuff in 96. 95 was the last pushrod Mustang. Then 96, they put a 2-valve. Yeah, and they put a 2-valve per cylinder, single overhead cam motor, 210 horse. But that motor can go 300,000 miles. Not a problem, as long as you don't go crazy. Then came 96 to 98. They dabbled in 32-valve. They had a Cobra in 96 and 98, 32-valve dual overhead cam, 305 horse. That was huge back in the day. But then 03, 04, it was like God came down and built that, like, oh my God, because at the time, nothing Ford was making mattered. It didn't even put a Camaro died because of the 03, 04 Cobra. Put a stamp on that shit. Look up when the Camaro stopped being made in 05, I think, and the Cobra killed it. But then in 04, they stopped making the Cobra, and in 05, they introduced the fucking 3-valve. Yeah. And that's the piece of shit I bought. Because I didn't want to buy a Terminator. I couldn't finance an old Terminator at the time. So I got into the Coyote Mustang, and this is basically not it's not the same family.
Right.
It's like B series, K series Honda.
Okay.
So B series Terminator, K series Coyote. Basically, that's the best way I could do it for the audience. And it's an evolution though. And they perfected it with I would say, the GT350 Gen 2 motor, which we can talk about the differences later. And the Predator GT500 motor is king daddy of any Coyote motor, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, that was some things about that flat plane crank and all that stuff with the GT350 and the differences between the two. We'll talk about later, like you said. So when it comes down to the Gen 1, right? What were some of the things that you noticed early on when you were, in your tuning phase or tuning era?
In the tuning era, the 2011s from the factory had a weird number 8 cylinder issue, whether it was not enough fuel, because you can individually fuel each cylinder. You can say, I want 10% on number 8, 5% on number 3, whatever. Unless you have EGT sensors on every single cylinder, you don't really know what's happening in the combustion, right? Okay. You're just like, okay, I think it's cool. You read the plug and you hope it's good enough. Well, what was happening is when you were really ragging on these cars, number 8 would fail for some reason. It could have been a lack of cooling. It could have been a lack of, let's just say, I think it's cooling, mostly in oiling maybe. There was kind of a deficient piston, but that wasn't really a design flaw, because once people started tuning them, that issue went away. And once they boosted them, the issue didn't even exist, unless you were doing really stupid stuff like using 91 octane and over 10 PSI, right? Then every cylinder would every piston would disappear. Right. So in the tuning phase, I started noticing that a couple of things. The twin independent variable cam timing allowed for low end torque and high RPM horsepower. If you have a cam in block design, like a 350 or LS, you put one cam in. One cam generally does not give you awesome torque and awesome horsepower. You sacrifice one for the other. You either have a cam for towing, low end torque, or you have a cam for high RPM horsepower. This has both, because I can make the cam, I could advance the intake cam to give me torque, to take in more air and stay open longer. And then at different RPM ranges, I can move the cams to give me high RPM horsepower. I could make it a big block down low, and
Yeah.
a small high revving, Coyote up top. Basically, not exaggerated but that's the best way I could put it. I could basically phase the cams to give me as much torque as I want down low as I
Right.
can, as the motor can give out. And then up top, I don't sacrifice power. The reason I say this is the fastest Coyote, quickest stock Brett LaSalle's car has custom cams, but our cams on the Lund Racing Grey Goose are stock Predator cams, meaning factory spec Predator cams. Nothing crazy because we phase them. On the other car, Brett's car, they're locked. They
Right.
are what they are. We have intake VCT on the Grey Goose, Predator cams, so that's we can still go over 200 miles an hour at 3,300 pounds and go 670s at 209 with a stock cam.
Okay.
So that's what I started noticing, that the advantages of VCT, variable cam timing, twin independent. That's why you kind of have to make that distinction. Twin independent variable cam timing was special on these cars. And once you go boost, you could just use the same cams. You phase them differently.
Okay.
You go turbo, same cams.
Yeah,
Phase them. You don't have to put a turbo cam. You don't have to put a blower cam. You don't have to put an NA cam. Those cams work.
So is there a benefit to upgrading the cams or swapping the cams out in any of these platforms? Gen 1, 2, and 3? Okay.
Absolutely. I think upgrading from what though, right? Gen 1, not great cams.
Okay.
But let's say if you were in a theoretical world.
Yeah.
Let's say you were to be able to install Predator spec cams on a Gen 1 Coyote.
Okay.
That'd be a badass cam. But it's made by Ford. That's the crazy thing.
Right.
So that's what they do. They mix match parts because this is a family of engine. It's a Coyote. So Coyote variant, and I hate that word variant, but it is true. It all interchanges. So I can take a Gen 1 bottom end, put Gen 2 heads on it, and I can't put Gen 3 cams on it because the journals are different on the cam, on the heads and all that stuff. But everything is pretty interchangeable. So if I was to say to you, if you were to say to me, Alex, I want to go turbo, what's the best cam to get? I said, Predator cam. And then, what do you mean? What about a cam stage 2? That works.
Yeah.
But I think a Predator cam would be better. And they're like, okay, so you confuse people because you stop saying get an aftermarket cam, and people go, especially if you come from the LS world. If you come from the LS world into the Coyote world, and I say leave the cam stock, you're gonna go, what? I'm gonna say, dude, stock motor can go 7s on a Gen 2 and up. This is a Gen 2. I can make this thing go 7s with head studs and oil pump gears and crank sprocket. That's like a prerequisite. Oil pump gears and crank sprocket. Studs, boost and fuel, 790 on a 3,500 pound car.
Yeah.
LS guys will go, what? what cam did you put in it? What name your cam did you put in there? I'm like, none, stock cam, because you have cam control. So as long as you have cam control and the springs aren't being stressed out from a bad exhaust issue on the turbo setup, sky's the limit. But typically I tell people Gen 2 architecture, in my opinion, is my favorite.
Okay.
Just because it does everything.
Right.
Gen 1, it's a little on the weaker side, but we can take it at your pace. But I think Gen 1 is not bad if you want to be at 700 horse. Wheel. You can go 9s with a Gen 1 motor on the car it came in, a Gen 1, and that's what I'm going to attempt to do later on. But I think it's very robust. And the Gen 1 motor, believe it or not, it's rods and pistons away from being nasty. If you put rods and pistons, but leave everything else stock, 1,000
horsepower.
Here you go. As long as you got the boost.
Right.
Here you go. You don't have to port the heads. Got to do nothing. The springs might need to be upgraded, like a Pack 1234 or 1234 spring. But you put rods and pistons in a Gen 1 Coyote, it's got 12 millimeter heads, bolts. Dude, thing's badass. Gen 2, I think, has 11 millimeter, but then Gen 3 went back to 12.
They went back to 12.
Yeah. So I might not be, but I know that these are the sought after blocks to build, or the Predator block. The Predator block is king. You don't have to do shit to that. Just put it in. Rods. If you want to do rods, pistons, be 1,300 like all day, every day.
So the common thing that I hear is this 3-2-1 setup.
Yes.
So can you kind of refresh my memory about that? Because Joe told me, but obviously I'm not.
So a 3-2-1 setup is a Gen 3 bottom end. So you take that Gen 3 block, it's 12-to-1 compression pistons, better rods, slightly better crank. So the bottom end, 12-to-1 compression, right?
Right.
You put a Gen 2 head on it and you use a GT500 Predator gasket.
Okay.
So 3, 2, and then the 1 is the timing set. So every car's generation 1, 2, 3, you have to match the cam set to, because the sensors are different, the chains are different, the cams are different.
Right.
So 321 on a Gen 1 is the budget badass motor. Gen 3 bottom end, Gen 2 heads, Gen 1 timing components. You can make 1,000. There's your 1,000 wheel. So that's like 1150 at the flywheel, whatever.
Right.
So, or a little bit under that. But typically 321 is the budget way of making 1,000 horsepower on Gen 1 Mustangs.
That's the budget way to do it.
That's the budget, because you get a Gen 3 bottom end, Gen 2 heads, and use your existing Gen 1 timing components. Because what's the alternative to make 1,000 to the wheel? A build motor.
Right.
You got to build a motor. You got to take it somewhere. Hope you find good motor builders. You know how awesome motor builders are nowadays. So it's difficult to find one you trust.
Yeah.
But by the time you're into it for like $15,000. And then a Gen 2, a Gen 3 bottom end, for a while they were $1,800.
Yeah.
But now they went up. They went up. But you could be into it for, let's say, if you can find Gen 2 heads under $8,000, and you have 1,000 horsepower capable motor. Under $8,000,
minus the turbo components or anything like
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm talking about what the motor can hold.
Okay.
Turbo included? No. Now we're shooting. So this is what I've told people in terms of a guideline. Let's say you want to go 8 seconds in the quarter mile.
Okay.
You get a Gen 2 Mustang with a Gen 2 motor already in it, with a 6R80. You stud it. You buy a turbo kit from Aldo on 3. You got to put it on 3 times, but it's all good. And then the or Hellion,
right?
20 psi fuel system. You're less than $50,000 into this car. Everything all in. A Gen 2 Mustang is $25,000. A turbo kit is $12,000. A fuel system is tops $2,500. And I think the stock trans will live. The motor will live. All you need to make is about 900 wheel. That sucker will go $899 in that platform for under $50,000, all in.
Right.
Car included. So now when you start taking motors apart and start taking blocks from this and that, labor, turbo kits, it just blows it out of the water.
Yeah.
So that's what I tell people. If you want to go 8s tonight, you do a Gen 2 Mustang. Gen 2 Mustang all day, because the Gen 1 Mustang is going to need a motor to run 8s. Okay. A Gen 3 Mustang might do it also, but it'll be more expensive. Why? The 10R80. The 10R80 will give up the ghost at about 800 horse. It's going to go leaving the chat, and then you got to build it. And depending on who you have build it, it could be anywhere from $6,000 to $8,000. And then you got to get a torque converter. So the budget kind of goes a little over 50.
Right.
So I always tell people Gen 2, that's the one you want to build. And it doesn't really look that much different than Gen 3. And Gen 2, if you can look at the difference between a Gen 3 valve cover and the Gen 2 valve cover, it's cleaner. There's no bullshit. There's no DI to deal with. You don't have to delete anything.
Right.
So I tell people Gen 2 architecture is typically the best one you want to build if you want to go fast on a budget on Coyote.
It kind of looks like, I was saying before, it looks like a B58 motor with a high pressure fuel pump and all the messy wires and stuff on the top. But I did see a nice valve cover, or what do you call them?
Cam covers.
Cam covers,
yeah.
Set up on the Gen 3. But it's a big motor though.
It's wide. So if you look at the cylinder head, that's what people go, oh my God, it's so big. What the fuck? And I'm like, okay, but look at the block.
Yeah.
Look at it from there to there. It's not any bigger than an NELS. It's not any bigger than a small block Ford. This is what kills it. The cylinder head design. It is just so big and wide.
Right.
And then you got to put headers or turbo manifolds here. And all of a sudden, you're out of room.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, it's not a viable swap engine because it's so freaking wide. And I totally get that.
Sucks, man.
It sucks because it's so awesome. But I totally understand people that want to LS swap something. I mean, even though I'm not a big fan, I get it. It's narrower. It's easier. It's cheaper. But if you want to perform and do nothing to the motor, Gen 2 and up, and you don't have to do, just make it fit, and places like this where we're at right now, Power by the Hour in West Palm, everything's plug and play. You want a Whipple on it, they got it, put it on. You want a control pack, here's a control pack, here's a computer, here's a tune, because they're Lund dealers.
You're right.
And boom, and you can literally plug in a car with the 85, everything bought from Power by the Hour with the trans, and go 8s.
So when it comes to fueling with these, right? When you say 1,000 horsepower, what does fueling look like? What does the setup look like for that?
So I typically don't like for a lot of people to be over 850 rear wheel horsepower with only 1,000 cc injector. Okay. So regardless of the brand, I know ID 1050Xs, you have a little bit more headroom. FIC 1000, D-Torque 1000. I think that's on E85, and we have to on E85 a less dense fuel. I think 1000cc injector, you shouldn't be much over 850 wheel, auto or manual, doesn't matter. If you want to be comfortable, I got enough fuel. You need at least 285, which is like a 520 liter per hour pump.
Yeah. On
a 4 Innovations fuel system. I call them 285s, or they call them 295s or 274s. So let's say minimum 285s and a 1300cc injector, and you could live at 1000 wheel all day. ID 1000, FIC 1000, D-Torque 1000, and 285s, 850 or so. And then you're gonna start seeing signs that the car is running out of fuel. And the way the Coyotes do it is the computer adds fuel. So the computer goes, oh shit, we need fuel.
Right.
And then in the data log, you see short-term fuel trims. Remember, these have wide bands. These read live, wide open throttle, what's happening, air fuel. And air fuel spikes. And you go, oh, you're out of fuel system.
Right.
Gen 3 has a fuel rail pressure sensor. Thank goodness. So we can see fuel rail pressure dropping. And we go, hey, you're out of fuel system. So you have to kind of know how to, as a tuner, that was my first experience. My black GT ran out of fuel system the moment I supercharged it. And Lund Racing was tuning it because we were still negotiating, the job.
Yeah.
And they were like, you're out of fuel system. I said, what? It's got 52s and a BAP. He goes, yeah, I don't give a fuck. Look. And he showed me the graph and it went, whoosh, it spiked up. Wow. And I was like, so what's that doing? He goes, the computer is going, we need fuel, because the computer is going, this is the command and this is what I'm seeing. So how am I going to counteract that? Well, I'm going to dump fuel.
Right.
And if it doesn't have enough fuel, it'll spike. And then the car will run out of fuel, basically, and grenade itself. And there is no way of protecting itself, not like other cars do. But fueling, I think, on an E85 setup Coyote, 1000 wheel, at least a 1300cc injector.
At least a 13cc.
ID 1300s X's,
ID
1300 are the best injector in the market. They're just, the data is unbelievable. They flow good. They just work. Yeah. And they're pump gas friendly.
Okay.
The moment you go to a 1700, the idle quality suffers. And even Injector Dynamics tells you, this isn't really a pump gas idle thing, but it'll drive okay.
Yeah.
But E85, I have 1700s in my GT500. And that's what I would get for anything over, let's say 1000 or 1100 wheel. But again, the most you need on a Coyote for 1000 wheel, 1300s, and it's pump gas friendly. So you can kind of do both.
Do you need to hit exactly E70 or E85 to get that?
That's a good one. So let's talk about ethanol.
Okay.
Ethanol, what does E85 mean in your world? Like what do you feel E85 means?
I mean, I always try to keep it simple. So, I mean, ethanol 85, just the content 85.
Perfect. Right? So what's the 15?
What do you mean?
Well, what's the rest? What's E85, right? There's 15% left over. The 100,
that's left
the
over.
100%, right? So what's the 15?
Yeah, good
hot
question.
dog water, hooves, chicken gizzards, nasty. It's not 87 octane. It's not 93 octane. Right. So when you go to the pump at Sunoco or whatever, and you pump E85 and it tests the 85 in your little beaker, well, 15% could be 93 octane, right?
Yeah.
That's okay. On pump E85, you can make 1000 wheel. The car's like chilling. I love it. Now let's say you find E70,
which is common. At the peak.
So what's the 30%? Chicken gizzards and hot dog water, right? So you're like, okay, so I have chicken gizzard 30 and 70% ethanol. And you're like, all right, cool. So then you want to make 1000. It'll make 1000, but then let's say you have knock sensors in the car.
Okay.
And they go, blip, blip. I didn't like that. And you're like, oh, it's all good. It's got 70% ethanol. It's all good.
Yeah.
But on E85, the knock sensors are flat. They were adding timing. They were like, we're not even. So that 30% eventually creeps its way into the combustion and kind of doesn't make it as robust. It needs octane. So when people say, you can make the same power on E55 than you can on E85.
I always hear that.
I'm like, okay, so you're telling me if the 45% is 87 octane, you're telling me that's a safer fuel, or as safe as E85? Now people say, what's the difference between E85 from the pump and E85 from Ignite or whatever? I go, the 15% is race gas. The 15% is like MS-109 or C16 or like Billy Badass shit.
Okay.
That's why when you sit behind a car that's running ethanol 1R, you go,
yeah.
this bitch, what is that? And you're behind a car that has pump Sunoco E85. You're like, smells good. It ain't hurting your eyes.
Right.
It ain't like, popping because the junk that's behind it is not really doing anything. Whereas the race version of the 85% has a bunch of crazy, dog stuff. Back in the day, there used to be this stuff called FTW Purple. That was before your time.
Yeah.
Oh, let me tell you a story, Sonny. FTW Purple. Dude. FTW Purple, I think, had like 90% ethanol and like the rest was like nitromethane. Like the dumbest shit. It was the dumbest. I wish I knew who the guy was that made that stuff.
Is it still legal or it's
no. He stopped making it.
Okay.
Like it's gone. It had the coolest logo, it had like a purple skull, like a skeleton going like this. And it smelled like grapes. So I was like, oh my God, what is that? And it was just the nastiest fuel. And it went away. There was some controversy behind that. So you might do your due diligence and check into that. It's crazy. But when someone says, I can make the same power as E55 as E85, I don't doubt that, but it's not safe. And what I'm saying is I live in the world of Lund Racing where we play in a safe sandbox. Mm-hmm. People say, oh, you're not going to get after it. I'm sorry. We won Street Fighter with a stock computer and a 6R80. We did okay. It's just a matter of making sure the customer has the safest setup, the best setup for him, and to educate him that if you're running on E70, on an E85 tune, the car's going to trim out some fuel. It's going to be a little rich. Mm-hmm. If you want an E70 dedicated tune, that 30% is hot dog water. So make sure that you account for hot dog water. So turn the boost controller down a little bit or lower the boost, But that's not to say you can't make the power. Technically, you can make the power on pump gas. Is it safe? Hell no. But theoretically, you should understand that the other percentages are not awesome race additives. Okay. And you should take that into account if you care about your motor. If you don't care about your motor and you can afford 3 of them, go ahead, run E50. I don't care.
Yeah.
But I would rather you be on the safe side, test all your ethanol, and be at least E85. I trust pump E85 up to about 1100 wheel on my personal cars.
Okay.
After that, no way. Ethanol 1R.
That's still high though.
It's high, but but not Coyote. My personal car is a GT500, so it's a 5.8 liter. It's a big motor, so that one's chilling at 1100. It's not really stressing. So pump 85, no big deal. But if I'm going racing, and let's say inlet air temps are a little high, which one do you think will have better knock protection, pump 85 or ethanol 1R?
I would assume ethanol.
Yeah. Because let's say your IATs get high. Now the combustion's hotter because IATs are hotter because you're 30 pounds of boost in the sucker.
Right.
I want the best octane possible at all times when racing. I don't want to go, well, all I can find in my area is E50. No. Yeah. Find E85, get it in a drum if you have to, for your own sake. Right. So you don't blow up your car.
I know you said hot dog water, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Do we know what the
87 octane, 89 octane, whatever is left? So you have to understand, like when they're distilling this stuff, let's say you're a Sunoco and you're making your Sunoco, right? So you're going to put E85 in your pumps. Well, what's the other stuff? What's going to be like the crazy dumb additives that like leftover 87, because it's a price thing, right? It's more like I see a lot of people go, oh my God, E85 is only $2 here. And I'm like, test it. Make sure you test it. And it's like, oh, it's E60. Because the pump, if you look at it closely, it says minimum percentage 55. That's all they owe you from the pump. Right. Even though it says the 85 on the label, all they owe you is 55% legally. Right. So I typically tell people the rest is usually like low octane fuel, just as a filler. It's filler. That's all it is.
It's all filler.
Mm-hmm. Mostly.
So do we still live in a time now where I remember back in the day when you had like E85, they always said like, don't leave it in your car too long because it's very corrosive. So our cars, or specifically Coyotes, all cars basically now, are they kind of designed to kind of be able to handle E85?
Every time you go fill up,
you
have 10% ethanol on that car.
Right.
93 octane or 87, whatever. All these motors, since ethanol was introduced as an octane booster, because it used to be lead. It used to be like crazy additives to lubricate, back in the 60s and 70s. So now the octane booster is ethanol.
Right.
So every car has 10%, every gas station has 10% ethanol. So the motors have to be configured for that. Now, if you have an old Fox body with an old fuel system from the 80s and you put pump gas in it, it might corrode the rubber. It's not really made to run that kind of stuff. E10. I have a Fox body, and I know that if I run E10 a lot, it's going to corrode the old pump, the seals in the pump, all that stuff. Now, as for letting it sit, I would never let a E85 car sit, and this is the caveat, in a humid place. If you have a garage and the car is sealed and it's not outside in a muggy area or in a wet area, E85 just attracts water. It loves, come on, let's go. It just attracts a bunch of water. Any humidity in the atmosphere, it just soaks it up. So if you have, let's say, E85 in a sealed tank, somewhere humid, cool. Now let's crack it a little bit. Shh, another one, crack it. That one's going to become like a gel substance. Because it just kind of soaks in all the water. There's a name for it, water something. I'm sure you guys will put it on the comments. But there is a process where it does soak in the humidity in the air.
Right.
So if you have a sealed, dry containment, no problem. If you're just letting E85 sit outside, it'll just become like a gel substance over the course of time, and it'll become mostly corrosive. And the crazy thing is this: you want to hear something crazy? I've seen situations where the E85 is high water content, but it tests at 85% because the ethanol in it is testing at 85%. The ethanol, it soaked up a bunch of water, but then all of a sudden the guy starts it and the trims are all out of whack. The car's running like shit. And I said, let me ask you a question. How long did this car sit? Oh, 4 months. I said, do me a favor. Just dump the E85, put fresh batch, fixes the issue.
And it doesn't damage your car at all?
It'll damage your car. Don't run it a long time. It'll just kind of pop and ping and not great, as long as it's still liquid. If it's in gel form, there go your pumps, there goes your filter, there goes your injectors. It all has to be cleaned. It all has to be flushed out. It all has to be put solvents through it to make sure you get all that gel stuff out of there. So if you catch it before it becomes a gel substance, you're good. But if you leave it somewhere enough where it grabs a bunch of water from the atmosphere or the earth or whatever around it, and becomes mostly water, but not gel, it'll run like shit. And then I just say, just get rid of it and just put, I say that all the time. I say, how long did it sit? Because this is what happens. I blew up my car, man. I blew up my car. I'm going to build the motor. Cool. Builds the motor. 3 months later, comes back in. Didn't fucking drain the tank. Turns it on. Plop, 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 plop. What the fuck is that? And I'm like, did you let it sit for somewhere? I just put it off in my backyard. Or the line's just hanging there. Yep. Drain it, put new gas in it, change your filter too. And they do, and it fixes the issue all the time. Or I tell them, run it on pump gas. Pump gas is a solvent, basically. Gasoline is a solvent. It cleans stuff. So start your motor on pump gas and just make sure there are no leaks. Make sure everything's cool. And then switch it over to E85. Because that's what I tell people. Let's start it on pump gas. Make sure everything's cool. And if it's cool, shove it over to E85 and you shouldn't have any leaks, no issues.
So Dan Rue mentioned that he went to a gas station on his episode. This is a while ago. And there's a specific gas station in Louisiana to stay away from because they've tested that there was water in the ethanol. But I don't even know if he was able to explain why there was water in there. But based on what you're saying,
think about it. The tanks weren't sealed properly, right? Yeah. So let's say, for instance, they have a bad filtration system. Let's say they have a bad filling system. Let's say the neck that connects to the tank underground is porous,
right?
And it just gets air. So the moment any time E85 sees air, it just soaks up the water in the air, the moisture. So that's why Dan Rue's probably like, don't go get ethanol there because that gas station is run like shit.
Yeah.
Usually, what I tell people, especially on the pump gas world, get gas from the busiest gas station. Okay. Don't get gas from 7-Eleven that no one's visited and you're like, oh, maybe it's got. No, that gas has been there a while. You want a lot of high turnover. Okay. And I tell people, you want a Shell or a BP, period. Don't go to a Sunoco.
Sunoco's not good?
Not that it's bad.
I only go there.
But it's not Shell. And it's not BP.
Shell is great, yeah.
Shell and BP, you're like, oh, but it's another 10 cents. Okay, well, your NOx sensors added 2 more degrees. That's like 9 horse. So how about use Shell? And they're like, oh shit, you're right. And go to a busy one because there's a lot of turnover. A lot of people are using it. The tanks are usually flushed, boom, boom. But if it sits there a while, like the Louisiana ethanol station Daniel was talking about, you might have high water content in there.
So Shell or BP, you said?
Absolutely. In my experience.
BP wasn't that good. I didn't know that.
No, Shell and BP, in my experience. Okay, so then there's regional. We want to talk regional. Puerto Rico has the best freaking pump gas on the planet.
Really?
Rami Zaidan, love the guy. He's a customer. He gets cars in Puerto Rico with 93 octane fuel and he sees the same spark as the 85. I go, how the hell is this happening? Where are you getting this gas? He's like, it's just pump gas. I go, I don't think that, dude, that's like C16. It's seeing 30 degrees. He's like, I don't know. I said, it's not going to make more power on the 85. He goes, it better. I go, it's not. It's not. It's just, it's already high octane and it's NA. He's like, okay, put the 85. It makes a little more torque, but that's it. And he's like, my customer's mad. I go, sorry, your pump gas is that good. So North Carolina has good pump gas. The Northeast has good pump gas in the summer.
Right.
In the fall and winter, it's trash. Texas has excellent pump gas. Louisiana, hit or miss. I think that whole state's fucked up. California, 91 octane is decent. Florida pump gas is trash unless it's Shell or BP. Marathon's junk. Marathon's absolute junk. Okay. Chevron's junk. From what I've seen, my experience seeing, remember, I told you about 60 cars a day times 5 times a week for 8 years. So when I see this data, it comes from a high volume of samples that I've seen around the country.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Damn. What about Sunoco out here in Florida?
Sunoco, I haven't seen any. Okay, it depends on the Sunoco because some Sunocos could be used by, the brand is just used by anybody. If it's a popular Sunoco that has the option of having 94 octane, get that.
Okay.
But again, most guys don't do that. Most pump gas guys go, 89 octane, then when I go racing. But the problem is when they have 89 in the tank, that's when the race pops up. You're on the highway, you're like, damn, this motherfucker showed up and I got 89 in the tank.
Yeah.
Shit. They're like, sorry, you're going to let, knock sensors are going to be singing for a little while. So it is a little difficult kind of like telling the customer, Coyotes are high compression. Gen 1 was 11-1.
Right.
Gen 2 was 11-1. Gen 3 is 12-1. So we're like, you need high octane fuel. Just use good quality pump gas. And if you have E85, get E85 in the sucker ASAP.
And the injectors, all the components to the fueling are fine with E85 and
because they're compatible with E10, which is pump gas.
Okay.
So on Gen 1, now tuners will argue this point. If you want to run NA, Coyote, Gen 1, E85, you need at least a 47-pound injector with Lund tuning. Okay. The stock injector is just, it probably be fine, but when you're like at 73, 400 RPM, I don't want that injector to just stay wide open and not be able to supply enough fuel. So we ask you to put at least a LU47 or even 1,000 cc. It doesn't matter. It pulses what it needs. People think, oh, I got a 1,000 cc injector on a Coyote, it's going to make more power. No, it's not. Yeah. I'm going to make 1 more horsepower. The octane is going to dictate the power that car's making. Right. So it doesn't matter if you have a 1,300 cc pump gas 87 octane, bigger injector doesn't do shit.
Right.
So Gen 1, you need an injector. Gen 2, you don't. And Gen 3, you don't. It has 16 injectors. It has 8-port, 8 DI.
Right.
So you don't need any injectors to run that sucker on 85 or Gen 2. Gen 2 seems to have for whatever reason, Gen 2, you don't need an injector upgrade to run 85 NA. Gen 1, you do.
Okay. So when it comes to adding boost into this whole equation, right? Is there any application that, it's more ideal on between the 3 generations?
Gen 2. Because Gen 1 has a rod limit, let's just say. Okay. The rods give up at about 750 rear wheel horsepower, depending on the power adder. Yeah. Turbo, they're more forgiving. It's free power. So you might be able to get with maybe high 700s or 800 on a Gen 1. On a blower, Gen 1, 700 or so. Gen 2 to me is the best platform.
Right.
It's 11-1 compression. It's Gen 2 architecture, meaning the cams are better, the valves are better, it's balanced better. If you're on a dyno and you dyno a Gen 1, it's like, oh, okay. Gen 2, ooh, you're like, what the hell? This bitch smooth and it made good power. Woof. So I would equate Gen 2 motors to being like a Gen 1 Boss motor. We haven't even talked about the Gen 1 Boss motor. That is Master Race. That is ridiculous. Gen 1 Master Race is a Boss motor. But we could talk that should deserve this whole episode. But the Gen 2 motor is as close to the Boss motor as you can get without having Boss badass parts. But Gen 2 to me is perfect. Gen 3, love it. 12-to-1 compression. But there's been some cam phaser issues.
Okay.
There's been some ring land issues because some of the motors were built on Wednesday and some guy just took a break and was like, blah. And I popped a number 8 ring land on my white GT, had to get a new motor in there at 10 PSI.
Yeah.
Nothing crazy. So Gen 2 has been so robust and it just keeps giving us better results. The more you throw at it, the more it goes, thank you. We love it. And the 6R80 architecture and the 6R80 transmission and the RPM limit. So on Gen 1, you have a hard limit of about 8,200 RPMs.
Okay.
Then you have to do special stuff in the tuning to let it go higher. Okay. Gen 2, you can go to 9,000 plus RPMs. Don't matter. Gen 3, same thing. So that's why Gen 2 is just done. Like no special patches, no nothing. Motor's badass. 6R80 is badass. Boost, fuel, party.
Right.
And that's why it might be annoying if you're a non-Mustang guy. You're like, oh, these fucking Gen 2s are everywhere. Oh, crash it. But there's a reason. They're highly sought after. They're highly configurable for road racing, drag racing, or just cruising or stancing out like a weirdo. You could do whatever you want. It's highly configurable. And in my opinion, it's the best out of the all generations, Gen 2.
Now, you mentioned 6R80 and 10R80. That's a pretty good kind of comparison to have and talk about. So between the two, what do you recommend, or what can you make the most power on? Because we know that the 10R80 has its limitations,
Yeah.
I'm assuming, right?
Yeah.
So can you talk about the differences between the two?
Sure.
When it comes to making power?
Making power 6R80 all day.
Okay.
We've made 2,200 horse through a 6R80 with the Grey Goose. We figure that based on the 207 mile an hour trap speed at 3,300 pounds. So we go, okay, this thing made stupid power, and it cut a 1060 foot. So meaning the transmission
1060 foot,
109. Eighth mile was like a 450 or 460, and then 679 at 206 or 208 or something. It was stupid. No, I think it was 209. So that's like 2,200 horse through a 6R80. Think about that. It's a factory case, not a SFI approved, nothing. It's just a factory case. It has better gears. Yes, it's been configured a different way based on power by the hour's findings. Basically, we converted it to a 3-speed. That's another conversation. But in terms of power output, the 6R80 by far. You can make a dyno pole and make 1,500 wheel on a 10R80. The moment you make that sucker go on a track that's grippy, it goes... it goes from a 10R to like a 2R. It goes, woo! It just goes, fuck you. It'll skip a shift.
Yeah.
6R80s go, bah, bah, bah. It just does what it's supposed to do. And it's not a fault of the tuning or anything. I think I think the 10R80 was designed more for fuel economy. Because why the hell do you need 10 gears?
Right.
Pro mods need 3.
Yeah.
So why the hell do you need 10 gears? Fuel economy. But this is the good thing about the 10R80. When a customer asks me, Alex, what's better, 10R80 car or 6R80 car? I always say, what do you want to do?
Okay.
And they're like, what do you mean? I go, do you want a drag race? You want a roll race? What do you want to do? They're like, I want a roll race. I go, 10R80. They're like, why? I go, well, if you get a ESS kit, 100 millimeter pulley, fuel system, E85 and a 1300cc injector, you're as quick as some GTRs, 60 to 130. 4s, easy, stock stuff. 4s. That I know GTRs have gone 2s, but what I'm saying is the regular everyday guy.
Yeah.
4 seconds is serious 60 to 130. A 6R80 takes a lot more. This is why. The gear split. So a 6R80 goes up, then the next gear is all the way down here like at 6,000 RPMs. Then it goes back up at 7,500, all the way back down here. So you're climbing a mountain each time. The 10R80 goes,
stays up.
and it stays up there.
Yeah.
Now, if you have a power adder that takes advantage of the high RPM capability and power curve of the 10R80, 60 roll, anybody. You could see, okay, who wants it? Like I told people, some of the most deadly combos I've seen are centrifugal 10R80 roll cars. Now, twin turbo, completely different atmosphere, stratosphere. They're dumb, really good. But the problem with turbos and 10R80s is the torque. The 10R80s don't like that torque. It stresses out.
Okay.
Whereas a centrifugal kind of just chills out until it hits the meat of the power band.
Right.
And it stays up there. And you can build an ESS 10R80 car in the forest for nothing. It could be a 980 car in the quarter, which isn't that fast, but the roll. So I say, what do you want to do, customer? Are we drag racing or are we roll racing? He's like, I'm roll racing, 10R80. That's what I tell people. If you're road racing,
what if you're dig racing though?
6R80.
6R80.
6R80 all day. Don't even bother with a 10R. The only reason is this: the first gear ratio for the 10R80 is like 430 or 450 something.
Yeah.
First for a 6R is 4.0.
Okay.
So most 10R80 guys launch in second gear. Actually, all the fast ones.
That's similar to like the ZF transmissions.
Exactly. Yeah. Second gear. Boom.
Second gear, right.
we send you a tune that the moment you put it in drive, it's already in 2nd. You don't got to paddle or nothing.
Yeah.
So now you're going 2, 3, and then you're kind of living up there. And if you pedal it, let's say you pedal it.
Right.
Spins, you pedal it. What happens when you let off the gas on a automatic transmission stock car? It upshifts. It goes, whoa, whoa, 3, 4, 5. Then you floor it again, and it goes 5, 4, 3, and then it goes wow, and then you do it again, and you're like, oh, the transmission goes, fuck you, I'm dead.
Yeah.
The 10R80 does a similar thing, but since there's less gears, you might be able to get away with a quick little stab. But I tell people, if you have an overdrive stock style transmission and you spin, runs over, you lose. Because if you pedal it, and if you're making over 1,000 horse, you're gonna smoke it. Because it's going to try to do a downshift. The converter's going to go from locking to unlocking. A bunch of stuff has to happen backwards, then forwards again when you pedal it.
Right,
That's why Turbo 400s are just, you could pedal it does what it does, you know, but with a 6R or 10R, I don't want to drag race a 10R ever. Okay. I would rather drag race a 6R. Think about it. Lund Racing won a badass street car event with a 6R80, shifting on its own, through a computer with a Ford racing computer. No Motec, no Holley, no nothing. Just doing what it does. So that tells you right there that if you're going to choose a badass racing transmission that's a Ford transmission, it's going to be the 6R80.
What if you have a 10R80? Like, can you dig race still or no?
You can dig race and you can do really well. Like, there's a lot of cars that run NMRA index classes, and they're in the 8s and they're chilling and they're doing really good. But
struggling or
well, you got to bring an extra transmission just in case.
Okay.
Right. Okay. You can't just go, I'm going to go racing down there and run 8s and drive it home.
Okay.
It's like I'm going to trailer it there. Hopefully it doesn't blow up.
Right.
And I'll trailer it back. So with the 6R, I can almost tell people you can drag and drive a 6R, run low 8s or high 7s and not worry. If it's built like by Power by the Hour and it's got all the right parts, absolutely. Stock, no. Stock, you'll smoke it. But in terms of, let's say, max effort, Billy Badass built 10R80, yeah, you can dig race it. Let's say your suspension is set up super good. The car grips. It hits all the gears. The guy really knows how to build transmissions and really understands everything. You can make an event or two.
Right.
But let's say if you're you or me and you want a fast dig 10R80 car.
Yeah.
And I want to race 10 times a year. I'm going to go to 2 transmissions. 6R80 seasons, and you won't have an issue. 2, 3, 4 seasons, and then refreshen it up.
Right.
So that's the difference. It's just there's more gears. If you see the 1-to-1 clutch per 6R80, a 10R80, it's tiny versus a 6R80, it's good size. So it's just a size thing and durability thing, basically.
Wow. So with these motors, right? I'm not going to ask you what makes Coyote so great. It's pretty cliche, right? But it has been mentioned plenty of times that that record was on a stock block, right? Can you talk more about that?
Yeah.
And kind of explain, because a lot of people say stock block or they say stock, unless you're saying unopened, that's really what I consider stock.
Right. So it all depends on your definition of stock, right? So let's say somebody come up to you and they're like, I got the stock motor B58 record. So, and then you find out it's got sleeves. Do you say that bitch ain't stock? What do you say?
No,
not stock.
That's why I said unopened is considered stock to me.
Perfect. And that's where the nuance is. Where Brett LaSala's car has run a best of 4.0 in the 8th and I think 6.2 in the quarter mile. That is dumb. It is a stock cast, meaning this cast was made by Ford. Okay. Ford did this, not a aftermarket billet, blah, 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 blah. But the block came from the factory, Predator block from a GT500 as cast. That's what we say, as cast.
Okay.
I would never in my life say stock block, because a stock block to me is a stock block.
Right.
Stock sleeves, nothing.
Yeah.
So when you say stock as cast, then then the wrinkles start to happen. You go, oh, okay, so it was cast by Ford. Yes. The cylinder heads were cast by Ford. Yes. These are all Ford parts. The guides, the lifters, all Ford parts. So you could say stock block that way, but I understand people saying it's not a stock block because it has sleeves in it. I totally understand that. So that car has a Predator motor built by FFRE, and it has, I think it went from a 5.2 to a 5.0, thicker sleeve. So I think it has aluminum rods. It had a Boss crank. That's why I said Boss is the God motor. It had a Boss crank for a little while, but I think they upgraded to a Billy Badass Windberg crazy crank.
Okay.
And it has GT350 heads, custom cams. But again, the heads, Ford heads. Block, Ford block. Not stock. It just means it's been modified, stock parts, but most of them are Ford parts. So for instance, if I bust up a billet block, I got to go back to the company that made the billet block and get me another block.
Right.
If I bust up a Predator block, I get another Predator block from Ford.
Okay.
And then I sleeve it.
Right.
So I think that's the nuance with the whole stock block, and people get mad because they want to hate on something, right? Imagine you're a GTR guy, a Viper guy, a Lambo guy, and an S190 runs 6.2 with a Predator motor, basically. And you're like, so let's say you want to swing your dick at these events and you're like, do I have to build an S197 with a Predator motor? Like, I thought the Viper was badass. So I understand that, but it's just a different league. That car has been vetted for a long time. That car was Joel Steele's old car. Joel Steele was a stick shift racer.
Right.
That car went 680s with a Gen 1 motor for years. Stick. Then he sold the motor, he sold the chassis, and it was a vetted, awesome chassis. Brett put his magic in it. He is an insanely capable racer.
Yeah.
And he put a turbo 400 in it, lockup converter, badass motor, 50 plus pounds of boost, 3,000 horsepower. That's all she wrote. And I think they get a lot of hate. So they're like, well, it's not stuck.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
It
got
happens with every platform though. Hey. And it's pretty common with a lot of the newer stuff, like the BMW stuff.
But don't you think that's new money? Don't you think BMW guys are new money? I know you're a BMW guy, but
I'm not. I'm actually not. I just have a BMW motor in my car. I didn't. I was never a BMW guy.
So you've seen the racing world from a bird's eye view.
Yes. And
you see how seasoned people act. You've been there before, right? Been there, you got it. It's all good. But B58, S58 guys, it's like wild. Like the wildest shit. Like it goes 990 and they lose their fucking minds. Yeah. And I go, no, that's impressive. But I don't go, oh, like I don't lose my mind. So I think they get a lot of hate because of the rah-rahing, we're the best. And I'm like, boy, you still haven't gone 7, bro. Shut up. But I understand it's a capable platform. Look, right. I the other day finally said, building a B58 or a whatever BMW is a good idea if you want to go 8s because the stock motor can take it, apparently, with a good built transmission, and this thing will go 8s. Whereas before I said Mustang's the only one. Now I'm like, no, the BMWs are there.
What you said, though, is key, though.
What?
Transmission.
It's got to have like a pure or someone.
Yeah, I think that the transmission is, I had this conversation earlier, but the transmission is a huge factor into those numbers, you know.
So does the tuning account trans stuff, or is it separate? Is it a TCM?
Yeah, no, there's trans tuning. There's like a XHP, where you can flash it and increase the clamping pressure.
Cool.
But yeah, I still think that's a huge factor.
Absolutely.
That transmission is amazing. That's why I love my car.
Okay.
Since everybody has it and it's, they know they can buy the car and go 8s.
Right.
It's like, why not?
Don't you think it's funny though when somebody used to be like Coyote Chris and now they're B58 Chris? You're like, boy, what the?
There's a lot of B58. Yeah.
Yeah. B58 Mike. I'm like, I get it.
Yeah. I get it.
Like, I get it. You got a BMW. Like, what do you want me to do? Like, I don't like, my name is like YDBT for life. Like, I'm like, that's what I put out there. But it used to be 50 Alex.
50 Alex.
It used to be 50 Alex back in the day.
A lot of
but
that.
Yeah, but I have a ZR1. You don't see me be like Z-Boy Alex. You don't see me, you have to have like it almost tells me that you're a Johnny come lately. If you're just like able to just, the wind is going this way. Whoa, B58 Chris. It's like, okay, whatever. But I love it. I love the enthusiasm, but the loudness and the rah-rahing makes me go, that's new money. New money, you create your first million, you start balling out, you start throwing it in the air, where old heads are like, nah, I'm going to keep it in the bank. I'm good. I'm going to stay nice and quiet. So it is interesting to watch. It's fun for the culture. You're like, wow, these guys are psycho, but the cars are moving out and you cannot deny the performance that the cars are pushing out there.
Right. I think the combination, it's the transmission and the all-wheel drive is the reason why. It's sort of like how Honda's proved themselves back in the day.
Yep.
Against the American muscle guys. It's the same thing. I think we're going through that same kind of era now, where the BMWs are actually proving themselves and saying like, yo, we can keep up with you guys from a dig.
Right.
Roll racing too, but
I don't fuck with any Jap stuff. Roll racing, they're legit super. I mean, they're light, they're fast, they rev high. My world is dig stuff. But again, I'm not a dig racer. I kind of got away from like being like a racer because let's be honest, the culture changed.
Right.
The culture of racing changed probably in the last 10 years.
10 years,
and it just kind of turned that. I don't want to say turn me off. It's just something I don't want to do.
I mean, you can say it did because it turns a lot of the old, like the OG people.
Yeah.
It turns them off.
It turns me off because let's say, for instance, back in the small town that I grew up in, I wanted to be the baddest motherfucker in that town, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to be known as the baddest motherfucker in the town. I would have never said, I ain't racing you unless you got 5 Gs. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, let's race for free.
It's fun.
Right. It's because I'm having fun. So the moment money comes into play, you know what happens. People start getting stupid. People start turning flashlights on, lasers, and trying to make you jump and trying to get that money. And I was like, I saw that happening and I'm like, I don't want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
I just want to go to a test and tune or a track rental, run my number, go home and just chill out. Like you said, I'm never outside. Same thing. I'm not looking to dabble in that stuff. I watch it. It's funny. It's fun, but I don't want to be in it.
Involved in it, right?
Yeah, not at all.
Do you have you ever raced a Honda before?
Oh yeah.
Have you ever lost to a Honda?
Oh yeah.
Now my question is, how everything's happening with the BMWs racing all these cars and proving themselves against American platforms?
Sure.
Now, do you think that if social media was what it is today, back then with the Hondas proving themselves, do you think it'd be similar? Do you think that you would
the loud crazy
just in general
stuff?
Because I feel like when you have a lot to prove, you show a lot of passion and pride behind it, right?
Yeah.
So if there's cameras involved and there's social media back then around that time, do you think it'd be the same effect? Do you think that it'd be like new money Honda guys?
Where there was social media back then, it was called VHSs, right?
Well, I'm saying how it is now. Everything is documented.
Well, yeah.
Literally.
So I remember watching videos of people street racing, and in that video cassette, calling out like a whole crew, and they're like, "Yeah, what do you?" And it was like, I hate to say, it was like gang stuff.
Okay.
It was like my crew versus your crew, and we're gonna go head up and wait till I see you. Da 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 da. Now you can call out a guy from California and be like, you ain't shit, your mother, da 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 da. You're never gonna see each other. You ain't gonna go to his hood. I'm not gonna go to my hood. So no, I don't think it. Well, yes, it would have been the same if everyone knew what everyone was running.
Right.
That's why grudge racing kind of is attractive to me. Kind of. The only reason is because they don't show times. But you have eyes. You go, well, that's like a 4.0 car.
Yeah.
Shit. No, I'm good. I'm gonna pass. Yeah. I'm punk money. Here's the punk out. Whatever. Now, if Honda's back in the day when they were proving themselves, were talking all that shit. If there was social media, of course. Like Puerto Ricans in the neighborhood would talk that shit when there wasn't social media. Like almost fights would happen. Whereas if there was social media back then, oh yeah, it'd be pretty bad because it's tribal. Right. Like the Chevy guys, the Ford guys, the Honda guys. Is there like beef within like Jap culture? Like is Jap bad to say? I don't know. Like what? Like Mitsubishi and like. No,
actually, Mitsubishi is a very like the community's strong. It's like the guys even say Jap guys. That's crazy. No.
Like, can you say that?
Yeah,
just beep it or whatever. No, but like do like. Let's say you're driving in your DSM and some Honda guy's like. Does he mean mug you? Like, look at that guy with the DSM. What's he doing around here? I'm like, boy, you're all from the same fucking island.
I don't know. Shit. I feel like it was very competitive back then. Because I grew up around that time when the Hondas and DSMs were like,
they would like hang out in the same like group.
I don't know if I ever seen that. It was pretty common. It was just Hondas and I guess DSMs. However, I never really experienced or saw like that kind of drama between the two because they're like, we're both four bangers. You know what I'm saying? Like.
Because Puerto Ricans are rotary piston, right?
Yeah.
They're psycho. Like rotary versus piston, the piston versus rotary, and you go to World Cup, and the guy's like, "Who wants the piston?" I would scream in the mic, but I don't want to mess up your stuff. Who wants the pistons to win? Ah! And then who wants the rotaries to win? And then a fight breaks out, and you're like, "Oh no, these guys."
There's other things involved in that, though. It's probably just
weed,
a mixture of drinking and whatever else. Things get hectic in the stands for sure.
I love it. That event is so wild to me. But no, I think we're talking about like rivalries. Chevy and Ford have a friendly rivalry. Right. We don't want to punch guys. We just say your LS sucks because it sucks. That's it. It's not because we think we just know it sucks. You just go there because you're cheap and poor. Cool. I don't care. And you can't afford a Coyote. No problem. But I mean, we say that and it gets them mad. And then they start talking about, they talk about stock bottom end records all the time. LS guys, stock bottom end record. Thing has cement in the bitch. Like cement in the block. I'm like, they came stock with cement in that motherfucker? Okay, got it. But I think the rivalry being tribal for no matter the generation. Yeah. If social media was around, I think they would have acted the same in the 60s, 70s, 80s. It didn't matter. Yeah. If you are competitive and you want to go fast, you're going to talk shit on a guy that's going similar time to you, 5 states away. Right. Just how it is.
Right. So let's go back to what you mentioned before about the GT350 and the GT500. I don't even think we got into the turbo application versus the supercharger application. Okay. That was something that was asked before. And I think it was probably, I don't know if Joe said it was better to have a turbo application or a supercharger. I'm not really sure.
It depends on what do you want to do?
What the goals are.
What do you want to do?
What the goals are.
One of the question I asked the most in to my customers in Lund Racing, I go, what do you want to do? Yeah. And they're like, well, I daily drive the car. I just want to make 650 on pump gas, and I'm never going to go 85. I just want to have a fun E80. I want a fun E85 pump gas car. Okay, blower. Right. I would never tell you to get a turbo. Why? So you can relocate your PCM, so you can wrap the whole thing in freaking header wrap and crap, and you have to worry about wastegate lines and this and that and blower. Wham! Here's the fucking boost controller, your foot. Yeah. And you're happy, and you go pump gas. Alex, I'm going racing, and I want to push everyone's shit in. Get a turbo, 2 turbos, big ones, mount them low, and make sure the thing has wheelie control. So it all depends on the application. There is no better application. Now, if you want to talk mechanics and say which application is more efficient, by far turbos. It takes exhaust gases that are being wasted anyway. It turns 2 turbines, and it goes through an intercooler, shoves it back in the motor, and then the rest goes out the exhaust. I mean, how it just turns the turbine, but it goes out the exhaust, but it's not losing any energy. Right. Or it is a slight lag, but nothing crazy. A blower, you're taking energy to make energy. Right. You're grabbing a blower by from the crank, pulling a air pump, and that's costing you 60 to 70 horsepower. But this is what you get from a blower that you can't get from a turbo: instant power. Right. Wow. Turbos are a little laggy, but people say no, they're not. Right, when you're on the 2-step bumping in and then you let go of the button, sure, it's not laggy, asshole. You got to do all that work to get there. But if you're just cruising and you downshift and you floor it, there's your power. Right. So that's kind of like what is the best application for you based on your goals. Right. And I love superchargers. I think they're great. My Fairmont is going to have a turbo because I'm going to race it. Right. I'm not going to daily drive it. I don't care. I want to race it. So, but not competitively. I just want to go to the testing tune by myself. Yeah. And just drive home and I'm good. But yeah, I think for racing turbo, if it's something that, if it's a class specific thing, you can, go through that. But I think racing turbo, everyday driving, because think about it. What did the OEMs use for their power adder? Hellcat, GT500, Roush. Superchargers. Yeah, they all use superchargers. When was the last time we saw like a twin turbo Billy Badass V8 factory car from American? Mercedes does, but that's a $150,000 car. Bi-turbo, small V8. Big money. But like American cars, blower. That's it. Right. So that's what I tell people. Whatever the OEMs do is going to be something that they have to warranty. It has to last a long time. So they've done all that vetting. Yeah. Turbo stuff, racing.
So if you want to make high horsepower, turbo's the way to go.
I think so. Okay. Then see that's why I need like specifics.
Yeah.
Just horsepower?
Well, I mean,
like on the dyno,
if you want to make 2,500 horsepower, you're going to have to
turbos. Right? Turbos,
right.
yeah.
Okay.
2,500 horsepower on a blower requires like methanol, all the compression, and like 40 pounds of boost. Like, it's just so stupid. Like the reason you see pro mods with blowers is because the rules are skewed in a favorable way.
That's what I was kind of going for, because people were mentioning that.
Right. So if you look at a World Series of Pro Mod, right now it's happening in Bradenton. So you'll see pro mods, turbo, nitrous, blower. Why? Why isn't it all the same? The best one is turbo, right? Well, what if I could weigh 2,500 pounds with my blower, but my turbos, I need to weigh 2,800 pounds. Why? Because the turbos have a bit of an advantage. But let's say for tuning purposes, blower is the blower. Once you step on it, it's going to make all the boost. On a twin turbo car, I got to bump in. I got to have a trans brake. I got to have a two-step. I got to have boost control. I got to have boost curves. The screw car goes, you're like, oh, and then you mess with lockup and it does what it does. Nitrous, even more of a weight brake.
Yeah.
But the nitrous peters out. Nitrous is great for the front half of the track.
Okay.
If you 60 foot and you get in front, you better hope you stay in front, because the blower and especially the turbo car, it's coming.
Yeah.
Senior, when he won at World Cup, he back-halved everyone. The last race, if you watch the last race, he was up against a big block nitrous Fox body. The big block nitrous Fox body weighed 2,800 pounds.
Okay.
We were 3,300 pounds. He out 60-footed us, 8th miled us, and we went at the top. So next year, if we want to run that event, we got to weigh 200 more pounds or 150 more pounds. Because they want to have parity. They want to have the competition be close.
Right.
So the reason people run blowers in certain classes is because they get an advantage, or it's favorable for tuning, not necessarily because it's better.
Yeah.
Right? Because let's say if I was allowed to weigh the same everyone else is allowed to weigh, but with twin turbos.
Right.
Everyone would get twin turbos. They'll figure it out. Oh, I can weigh 2,400 pounds twin turbos? Okay. Yeah. It's all about the weight break. It's all about how the configuration is penalized or not penalized, or what you're comfortable tuning. Me, Alejandro Flores, if I'm going racing, I'm going twin turbos.
Twin turbos.
That's it. Yeah,
I think a lot of this stuff is pretty simple. I think that what I noticed in your lives is that a lot of things are like kind of overcomplicated. The questions.
I think the people complicate things.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to do that because you get overwhelmed. There's so many different factors when it goes into building a car. When I get the answers, it's just like, that's it.
Right.
You know, it's just like,
it's common sense. So a lot of people want to do things because it's different, not because it's good. So they'll say, I want to put a GT350 motor behind a 6R80, but then I want a turbocharger and supercharger. Can you do that? I'm like, that is stupid. Like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Why do you want to do that? And it's only because they want to be different.
Right.
It's not because it's better. I'm going to say that combination you just said sounds worse than like a Gen 2 twin turbo combo. Well, it'd be cool. No. So, okay. Don't get too deep into the weeds. Just keep it simple, stupid. Like, keep it really simple. What do you want to do? And that question, I think, disarms people, because I'm sure people have looked at all the magazines and they're looking and and I know I want this cam and I want this phaser and I want this valve and I want this spring and I want this and that and I got it. And Alex, what do you think of my build list? And it's a vomit post. And I'm like, so I read it like a dumbass and I go, a Gen 2 motor with twin turbos. And they're like, why? And then I send them data logs, I send them pictures, I send them time slips, because I have a insane database at Lund Racing. I go, this one went 8s, this one went 9.0 with slight boost, this one, this. And then they go, fuck, I just overcomplicated my shit. And you just like, I'm like, yeah, just make it easy on yourself.
Yeah.
So a lot of the times you have to kind of like, my job most of the time is a consultant. I consult people. I talk them off the ledge because they're like, they have so much knowledge or data that they can't put together. And then they ask me to filter it. And I go, here it is. It's real simple. And they go, damn, thanks. So that's what I do mostly on the lives. And sometimes I get frustrated, but it's because I've answered the question 1,000 times. And that's why if you look on my YouTube channel, I have build series videos.
Yeah.
How to build a Gen 1 auto NA car. How to build an auto NA Gen 2 car. 3, boosted, trip, manual, auto. And now people go, thank God he answered the questions and gave me examples.
Right.
So that and then I did it like off the dome. I was like, here it is, one take. Because if you do a bunch of takes, you could tell that people notice that you're not really giving them information that you know.
Right.
They're like, oh, he's reading.
Yeah.
No, here it is. It took a couple takes, but once I got it. And I just consult people to try to unfuck their combo. That's what I do.
So when it comes to consulting, one of the things that a friend of mine who has a GT500 is, he said that.
What year GT500?
It's a
2020?
I think it's a 2020.
Yeah. Anything 2020.
It's a new one. It's a beautiful car. He has twin turbo on it, but he was having issues with it. I think with the transmission or something like that, and tuning.
Yeah. Because there is none.
Right. But I think he's like one of the only people in the area that, at least in New York, who has that setup. So he's kind of like stuck, dealing with that.
Right.
One of the things that he mentioned was the fact that you guys don't really offer anything outside of like the emailing back and forth.
Correct.
Why is it all email?
Paper trail.
Okay.
Right. So if you were to tell me, Alex, I'm looking to send this thing to the fucking moon. Let's say you call me, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, Alex, I want to send this thing to the fucking moon, bro. And I don't give a fuck what happens. I got money. Let's go. Okay, what do you want? I got ID 1700s, the fuel system. And if the motor blows up, I don't care. Okay, cool. Send you a tune. We've had a phone conversation. Nothing in writing. Now the motor chucks a rod, sends it to the moon, and you go after me because you said I was irresponsibly tuning your car.
Yeah.
But now it's in the ticket. And it says, I don't give a fuck if you blow up my shit. Blah, 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 blah. I'm like, write that down. Yes, write that down. So if you try to hit me up on a chargeback or something, I'm going to say, look, he filled out the disclaimer. Yeah. He said, fuck my motor. I want to gap homie. And I gapped homie, but I blew up my motor and he tried to do a chargeback.
Yeah.
It's in writing. So we do everything in writing because do you know how many people have like tried to like do chargebacks at Lund Racing? We're like anywhere. We're like the Chicago Bulls of like of that. We don't lose because it's all in writing. People literally have bought a tune and a device, installed it, finalized it, done a chargeback.
What?
And I'm like, why? Your car just made 650. It's like, oh, he disappeared. So I'm like, okay, but then it's on paper. It's disclaimers. Just by ordering a tune, you automatically
check off certain things.
You check off certain things.
Yeah.
So that's why we do that. Now, this is the other problem, especially with Shelby guys. Shelby guys love to feel special. Shelby guys want to hear the words, your car is special. Oh my God. There is no other car like that but yours. Oh my God. It's so badass. You have the best spec. And you're like, and they're like, yeah. Oh, hey, John Lund called me. Alex called me. Yeah, I got him on my phone. They love that in-person treatment.
Yeah.
The problem with that is if we were to have a phone system for 4,000 people and 4 tuners, we'd never get anything done.
Right.
We can't sit there and talk all day, but we can sure as hell email. The tunes are pre-configured a certain way. So let's say, for instance, what's a common combination for B58 guys? Like what's the go-to, like downpipe, tune, and like E50?
Downpipe, tune, E50.
So let's say I tune 30 of those.
Okay.
Do you think that version 30 is so refined that I can put it in homie's B58 and it's going to be fine?
I mean, it should, no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because did BMW build homie's car differently? No, it's the same B58,
should,
same mods. Let's say you have the same mods. So we have files that are pre-configured based on like 1,000 versions of that.
Right.
And if you read the file name, it says like, 14 JLT version 38 B. And then, blah, 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 blah. So that tune I know is going to work. Unless Ford one day decided to put a big block Chevy in your shit. Yeah. Right? So I know it's going to work. So I think the Shelby guys go, but it's a Shelby. It's different. Carroll Shelby blessed it himself. Like he's been dead for 10 years, but whatever. So then they end up going, oh my God. They want that special treatment. And nothing wrong with that. It's $100,000 car. I get it. But it's just a Mustang.
Yeah.
It's just a Mustang with a Predator blower and, good stuff. So it's not that special, but they require that extra special. Like, is there a bougie-er German guy than like, who is the bougiest German? Is it Audi? Is it, who is the guy that has his nose up in the air and is usually kind of like on the gay side who has like a German car that you're like, all right, he might go both ways, right? There's got to be one type of guy. That's what our Shelby guy is. are.
Okay.
You know, so I'm not gonna
You were asking me. I was like, "Wait, you lost me with that laugh."
like, you don't know? No, but there's got to be like the equivalent of a Shelby guy in the German world. Porsche, right?
Yeah.
Porsche guys.
Okay.
Perfect. Yeah. Porsche guys, badass car.
Right.
Shelby guys, badass car. It doesn't warrant like an extra touch just because it's a badass car. Right. That's all. If you trust a tuner, the car is going to perform really well based on the crazy amount of data we have on it.
Yeah.
So that's probably the only time that we would like maybe have a little bit more of a process because they need that little extra coddling. That's all. Nothing wrong with that, but you have to understand once you see Shelby on the ticket, you're going to get to know him. He's going to tell you his whole life story. He's going to tell you who his wife is, his kids, how he grew up. I'm like, all right, cool. Yeah.
That's so funny.
It is. It's like, oh, well, the way I got into cars, I'm like, this has nothing to do with tuning. They're like, well, you need to know this. I'm like, okay.
Literally.
It's a book.
So why don't you guys offer like transmission tuning for the newer Mustangs?
It's not available. Tremec locked it.
Okay.
Tremec locked it.
So there's no hope for that right now?
No.
So even if you spend all the money in the world to have a fast GT500 right now, you know.
That's funny. So the GT500 is limited by the transmission.
Right.
So just like the BMW, imagine having a BMW with no trans tuning and no built transmissions. None. What's the quickest it can go? 950?
Yeah.
Right?
I'm like that, yeah.
GT500 is stuck at 9.1. Stuck. 1,300 horsepower GT500s. Full weight. Light ones go 8s, but only with special stuff.
Who's got the record for that?
Evolution Performance.
Okay.
DCT was 880, but they put a turbo 400 in it and it went 8.1 or 8.0.
So there's not one on the planet right now, GT500, that has a transmission tune.
No, because Tremec locked it. So Ford does something really stupid, in my opinion. And even Jim Farley, the CEO of Ford, said so. He said, we farm out all the modules. So the steering module is made by like Bosch. The seatbelt modules made by someone else. And we, Ford, don't have access to the firmware of those modules. So what they did with Tremec was that. They farmed out a transmission, farmed out the tuning, worked together to make it work on this car, and don't have access to it.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, give us access. Tremec's like, no. So Tremec is the one holding us up from, this is what I tell people. The moment we break a DCT is when we have the tuning. Meaning you have to tune it so that it breaks.
Yeah.
You have to clamp them clutches, smoke them, do whatever, because most of the issues with the GT500 is the clutch temp.
Okay.
You ever see GT500s at a drag strip? They do the big John Force burnout, and I'm like, it's not going to shift in a second. Sure enough, they launch, clutch over temp code, it neutrals out to protect itself.
Right.
So I'm like, so if you disable that, if you enable all the torque reduction to be removed, and once you can break a shaft, you go, we got it. Now let's make it stronger. Now let's go ahead, send it to Ben Calamer, send it to whoever, Tick or whoever, and let's build it.
Right.
And let's put that same tune in it that broke before, and let's see if it runs a better number. Until that happens,
nothing.
And it's been what, 4 years
since
2020. No transmission tuning.
Can you swap out and put like a TH400 or the GT500?
Yeah,
right
they've gone 8.0s with a stock motor.
8.0s with a stock motor.
Stock motor.
That's if. So what are the options for transmissions if you wanted to swap out your
Turbo 400.
Turbo 400?
That's it.
The only thing right now.
That's it. Unless you want to put a 4R70, which Ford guys would know that's hilarious. No, like a Turbo 400. If you want to go drag racing, Turbo 4, or T56. Someone tried to put a T56, and the amount of OBD2 crap that had to happen to one, even have the car turn on.
Really?
Because think about it. What do you need to do to? There's a knob. For the gear selector, and
oh shit, that's right.
How does it know if you're in the car when it has a clutch, a brake, and a shifter? So you have to like go into the CAN bus system and start fooling it and start poking at it and
basically
doing all
BMW shit,
dumb shit. Part, yeah. So people just go. I tell people if you want to have a good 800 horsepower car, GT500 is cool. 900 to 1,000. Can it do it? Yeah. Will it have clutch temp codes and be an asshole? Yes.
For right now.
Yes. Correct.
Okay.
If you want to go fast right now with any Mustang, get a Gen 2.
Gen 2, like you said, yeah.
Gen 3, and you know what pisses off GT500 guys the most is when a GT beats the shit out of them. Like, wow. Like, what happened? I'm like, it's a GT.
Yeah.
Got all the tuning, got all the stuff. It's got a 10R80, it's got an ESS kit.
Right.
It's going to fuck you up.
Yeah.
So be careful. Don't be sleeping on just because it has a centrifugal 10R80 ESS car is a 4-second 60 to 130 easily. And GT500s can get there too, I'm sure. But man, don't sleep on them because you might lose to a GT.
The combination is pretty deadly.
The combination is deadly. You got to be careful. Yeah, you got to be careful. And some of those guys are the poorest, brokest looking motherfuckers you've ever seen. Like VMS rears only. You ever see those guys that have just rear drag radials, but the front stock? We make fun of those guys all the time. Some of those guys run 4s at 60 to 130 and they probably owe 3 months on the car. You know, it's crazy. They just because they're kind of on the broke side doesn't mean they're slow.
Right.
The combo is just that good. I think the car makes up for a lot of like the lack of knowledge, and that's the problem. And maybe in the BMW world, it's a similar thing. Mm-hmm. A lot of guys that pop off like they're badass, but the car did it. The car already had that.
Yeah.
The tuner put more boost to it. You put a tire on it, and now you're like, what are you popping about? Like the car did it. Like, or the tuner should be popping his collar a little bit. But in the Mustang world, that's the same thing.
Yeah.
A guy builds a Mustang, and he all of a sudden opens a shop. I'm like, why are you opening a shop? You put parts on a car. What are you doing? You don't have any background in engineering, anything. And like, oh, I built the car, so I think I should build cars for other people. And then we start telling them do this and this and that, and they get lost in the sauce. And they're like, oh, I don't know anything. I'm like, right. Just because you have a fast car doesn't mean you should open a shop at all. As a matter of fact, don't open a shop. Please don't open a shop.
Let them know, man. Talk your shit.
A lot of these guys need to not have a shop. And that's okay if you want to do it and you want to make a business out of it. But if you are not R&Ding and really understanding what's happening with these cars, leave it to the experts. Right. This shop used to turn out some of the sickest cars when the Coyotes were around.
Yeah.
They got out of it. Like, I'd rather just sell parts. Because that's where the money's at. That's where this is R&D. Yeah. This is like heavy R&D, deep, knowledgeable stuff. That's where the money's at. Putting parts on cars, it's just putting parts on cars.
It's common. It's very, very common across all platforms now with the newer stuff because it's so easy to open up a shop and do it. I mean, I respect the fact that you can even
some
open
thrive.
Up a shop.
Some guys make it. Some guys should have and that's okay if you want to do it and try it, but there's a reason why we fucks with certain people and we don't with others.
Right.
That's all.
Right. So can you talk about the differences between the 350 and the 500? Because I know you wanted to touch on that.
So
earlier.
The GT350 came out in 2016. That flat plane crank, badass heads, badass cams, 8,200 RPM rev limiter stock. Awesome little platform. But it did have some issues with the rotating assembly and oil consumption in 2016 to 2018. You started seeing like as much as like a quart be missing every 300 miles. If you do a track day event, you'd be missing a quart after that track day event. And you're like, what the hell is happening? It's just odd. They had TSBs for oil consumption. And you know, it kind of, it is a 5.2 liter, but it is a flat plane crank. Obviously just like a Porsche or anything like Subaru, flat plane crank stuff. The GT500 came out, so people thought, oh, it's got a 5.2, so it must be similar to a 350. Similar displacement, totally different block.
Right.
So in 2019, the 350 supposedly carries a Predator block, but it still has a flat plane crank in it. So that's why we say the crank is stout, the rods are decent. You can boost a 19 to 20 GT350 to make 900, 1,000, no problem.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, the Predator cross plane crank and its rods and pistons, you can get away with like 11 or 1,200 horsepower blower, you know, whereas a GT250 would make that with twin turbos. It needs twin turbos to make big boy power. That's why Fat House Fab has really fast GT250s. They use a stock crank. They make over 1,200-1,300 horse, and the 19 to 20 variants are just better. So the key differences is, I would say in the motors would be the crank. 19 to 20. Let's take 19 to 20, so they both share same block. Okay. I would say the crank and the cylinder heads. The cylinder heads on Predators are good, but they're not as good. Well, I'm not going to say they're not as good as GT250 heads because not many people have swapped a Predator head in a older generation Coyote. Okay. There hasn't been that swap yet because the cams are specific journal, specific connector. I don't know if someone has done a Predator head comparison to a 350, but The Grey Goose's motor has a 350 head for a reason.
Right.
Brett LaSala's motor has a 350 head for a reason.
Okay.
So if you were to say the key differences would be the cylinder head design and the crank. And the compression. The compression on the GT350 is 12 to 1. Mm-hmm. The GT500 is in that 12 to 1. And the GT500 is like 10 to 5 to 1.
Yeah.
I'm not 100%. Don't quote me on compression stuff, but it's in the 10s.
Okay.
So it's definitely less compression, but it's supercharged. So it does that so it can get away with 12 PSI and pump gas.
Right.
Whereas a GT250 stock, the knock sensors hate life. The knock sensors go 12 to 1 compression, 8,000 RPMs. They start, like they desensitize them from the factory to make sure that it's happy. And you have to run 93. You can't run 91. Cannot run 91.
What?
On 350.
On 350?
Yeah.
Okay.
On a GT500, I've heard some wild claims. People saying, oh, you can make 800 on pump gas. I'm like, just like we said before, you can, doesn't mean you should.
Right.
You know, you can blow up a GT500 motor. We've seen it many times. So it's just a matter of, I don't know, picking your battles. But I think the key differences is one is optimized for NA. The other one is optimized for boost.
Right.
But if you boost a 350 motor, it's a real good time. Just like the 2J conversation we had before.
Yes,
where NA 2Js have power potential.
Yeah.
And can you boost an NA 2J and have it make stupid power?
Yeah, because they're saying that the heads flow better.
And are people taking an NA version and shoving a turbo on it and going, bro, this thing kills it?
Yeah, or they're taking the heads from that. And
the
putting
heads.
It on. Yeah. That's what they claim. That's what I heard. Let's say that's what it is, but they're saying that the NA heads they flow better.
So you could sort of make that distinction in comparison between a 350 and a GT500, 19 and up. Flat plane crank, better heads. Cross plane crank, lower compression. If you were to boost the 350, it's going to make crazy power for low boost. 10 pounds makes 800, no problem. Whereas this guy over here needs 15 pounds or something to make 800. So it's a matter of like the key differences is the compression, the crank, and the heads.
The heads.
The heads. And if gun to my head, which one would I pick? I'd pick the 350 motor all day.
350.
All day.
So you
I want that compression. I want that fucking 8,000 RPMs. I want to be like, I want to make 800 on 10 PSI. Think about those words.
Yeah.
800 on 10 PSI. Twin turbo. Give me twin turbo, 800 horsepower, 10 PSI. Dude, the other one needs 15.
Right.
All day. I'll take a 350 motor.
But that's just the difference between compression, right?
Compression and cylinder head design and cams.
Okay. So if you
everything.
had the same compression on a GT350 and a GT500, right? Where are you at?
What is the application? What am I doing with it? What am I doing with this
Same
car?
compression you have.
So a 12 to 1 Predator versus a 12 to 1 Voodoo.
Correct. Because the only thing left at that point, I would assume, is
both
just the
boosted.
Head. Yes. Yes.
The Voodoo.
So the head.
The Voodoo. I want the Voodoo.
Okay.
Yeah, I want the Voodoo. So the cross plane, you can rev a Predator to 8,000 RPMs. That doesn't mean it's a good idea, but you can.
Right.
the thing, the GT250 is sleeping at 8,000 going. Pfft. It just doesn't care. It goes, oh, cool, thanks. It doesn't sound like it's stressing.
Yeah.
The GT500 sounds like it's kind of stressing. But let's say, for instance, in an alternate universe, both are twin turbo, both are 12-to-1 compression.
Yeah.
I think it's a wash. I think it's you have more torque with the crossplane crank because of the design.
Mm-hmm.
You have more high RPM capability with the flat plane GT250 design.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my theory. No one has done that yet.
Right.
No one has done a 12-to-1 Predator. That'd be cool, but because they make 1,100 the way they sit, people typically don't.
Are the rods weaker in one than the other? Than like the
I would say the rods are better in the Predator.
Okay.
I think the Predator overall is a better motor, but you're asking me. That's the problem. I know too much, and not because I'm smart. It's just I have a lot of data, and the 350 to me just sounds so freaking cool.
Oh yeah, no, of course, yeah.
That you go. But the Predator motor to me is better overall.
Okay.
Let's just say overall, gun to my head, pick one. Predator motor, above all for power.
For power.
For power. Yeah.
For power.
But which one do I want? I want the Voodoo. It's crazy. It is an interesting thing that I've never even gotten brought up. Like, which one would you pick? Gun to your head on both. And I'm like, fuck. That's a good question.
Yeah.
Probably the Predator because it can hold more power than the Voodoo. The Voodoo needs a little work, I think, in order to, like, you need, no, you don't need sleeves. It's a Predator block.
Bro,
I got him thinking.
That's
yo.
a walk. That's good. That's a
and it's not even a crazy question, but it's something to think about.
No one's ever asked that. No one's ever said, "Hey, Alex, out of those two, which one would you pick if power was the goal?" I would say power being the goal, be the Predator, but the cool factor and the peak power anyway is going to be 1,000 or 11 with the GT250 motor. It's an interesting question. See, if I had like FU money, I'd do it.
Yeah,
I'd do it, but I don't have FU money. I'd be like, let's 12-1 this, 12-1. Let's see what it makes. But 3 people will watch that. You know, they're like,
that'd be cool though.
Super
I've seen
cool.
some comparisons on YouTube, and there's always a gray area because nothing's been actually tested yet.
Right.
So
there's theoretical stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of theoretical stuff. So you never really know, but it's a good question because it hasn't been
done
yet.
Like no one. Imagine if I tell a shop, okay, take this Predator motor, stuff 12-1 pistons in it, or take the Voodoo motor and put 11-1 pistons, 10-1 pistons in it. Then it loses the allure. Right. So if you make the Voodoo more like the Predator, it's not going to be Predator. But if you make the Predator more like the Voodoo, I think it'll be better. So I think the Predator probably at the end of the day is the better overall platform to make power with. Yeah. Now if I could put a set of GT250 heads on that Predator, which you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been proven. That's Brett LaSalle's motor. That's our motor.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, that kind of proves it. Yeah, we both have Predator bottom ends with 250 heads. I mean, it's a hybrid, but it has the best of everything.
Yeah.
So that's the answer to the Predator. Unfortunately, damn. I was hoping that the Voodoo would have. I just love the high revving nature of that motor. Yeah. It's just awesome. Transmissions are great, but man, imagine if you're a Ford enthusiast and you have in your stable a high revving V8, a supercharged V8. You have 3 generations of Coyote, and the trucks are out there gapping people.
Right.
You're living in a pretty. This is like the golden era of Ford performance. So it's tough to not, kind of talk some shit. But, there's other platforms that are coming up and doing real well, but it's really tough to go up against Ford stuff right now. They're everywhere doing everything in every platform. It's kind of crazy.
So with the Coyotes that come in the F-150s, how similar are those to the ones that come in the Mustangs?
So in 11 and 14 Gen 1, the difference was lower compression. Okay. So the F-150 compared to the Mustang had, I think, a full point lower compression. I think, don't quote me on compression stuff. Yeah. Intake cams were totally different. So what people were doing is they were buying a pull-out 11 F-150 motor and putting it in their swap car, and they go, how come it's not making the same power as the Mustang motor does? Yeah. The intake cam's different. The exhaust cam's the same. And it has a full point lower compression. So now you do have a Coyote, but it's not a Mustang Coyote. Right. So Gen 1, they were able to, people that would swap them, they put Mustang intake cams, but it still had a point lower compression. So Gen 1, lower compression intake cam. Gen 2, lower compression.
That's it. Intake
and
cams.
different firing order.
Okay.
The cams were their own spec.
Right.
They weren't like the same exact motor, Gen 2, but they did have a similar computer, a tri-core. They did have high RPM capability. They both had a 6R80.
Right.
Same as Gen 1. They had a 6R80. But Gen 1 had like a weird 6,800 RPM limiter. And to get past it was stupid. Gen 2, you could rev it to whatever the hell you wanted.
Yeah.
And that is basically a lower compression, different firing order engine.
Okay.
F-150 versus Mustang. Gen 3, same compression.
Okay.
Same horsepower.
We're getting there.
Same horsepower.
Okay.
I think a different firing order. I think. And that's 100%, not 100% on that. And a different like cam design because the high pressure fuel pump is different. But you can make the same peak horsepower on an F-150 motor than you could a Gen 3 Mustang motor. So Gen 3, both 12-1 compression. That's why the Gen 3 10R80 F-150s are gapping. Like they're super stout, super strong. You can make 800 horsepower, 900, 1,000 easy, super easy. Whereas Gen 2, you could make them roll out, but they just needed a little more work. And not a lot of people were in the truck game until Gen 3. Remember, Gen 3 trucks came with 12-1 compression, all the horsepower, and a 10R80.
What year was that again?
18.
18. So the 18 is the one that you see on YouTubers builds and all that stuff. Everyone's at. Okay.
18, 19, 20.
Right.
21 is a completely different motor. It's a Gen 4 Coyote.
Okay.
Still 12-1 compression. It has a belt-driven oil pump. I'm not a fan of that shit. But they seem to make decent power. They seem to do okay. It's still kind of new because the tuning recently came out for those after like 2 or 3 years. So the further we get into late model cars, the harder they are to tune. The 24 Mustang is not going to be tunable, I don't think, for 2 years.
Yeah.
The F-150 wasn't tunable for 2 full years.
Right.
So the ones you see out there, Gapin, Manuel, and Cletus, it's 18 and up.
18 and up.
But Gen 2, if for the ones that know, that's the one to build. People don't want to...
Gen 2 across the board, Mustang or F-150.
Badass, pinnacle. Think about it. The GT350 has a Gen 2 architecture. It doesn't have direct injection. It has a tri-core computer. Okay, so it's Gen 2 architecture.
Yeah.
Gen 2 Mustang was so badass. Gen 2 truck, tri-core. Gen 2 architecture, 6R80. So if you want to go fast dig race with a truck, Ford, 6R80. Gen 2. But those that know, just don't say nothing.
Yeah.
That's the one to build. Because they go, Gen 3, look at Gen 3 doing shit. But then we have a couple of customers that have gone 8s on the stock motor on a Gen 2 F-150 6R80, single turbo. But you don't hear about them because it's not sexy. It's not like they're not out there, doing shit on the street. They're dudes that just build it. It's sitting there, candy apple red, looking all good. And the sucker's an 8-second Gen 2 truck, season after season after season, because of the 6R80, because of the Gen 2 architecture. No issues with the Gen 3 bullshit. No issues with the DI. No issues with the 10R. Dude, Gen 2, if you know what the deal is, a Gen 2 truck is the one to build. Gen 2 everything.
Gen 2 truck.
Gen 2 everything. What is there an equivalent car in the Japanese aftermarket that everyone looks at and goes, that's the one to build if you want to have the least amount of headaches, get there faster, whether it be name it, GTR or anything.
Oh, but the car itself.
The car.
Motor. Okay.
No, the car, because it parts are robust, tuning is available, it's a proven platform.
What about on the budget side? That's the catch, really.
Oh, okay. Let's go budget. Let's see what you say about budget. So,
well, are you asking like you can
the cheapest
that you
can go the fastest?
I would assume a Honda.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what Honda? What's entry level? Let's say I'm I want to get into the Japanese market. What's the entry level car to fuck with? 240? Right.
No, that's a good question. That's a good question.
So on the Ford side, I go, what do you want to do? You want to go modern and fast? Gen 2 Mustang. If you want to go just fast, Fox body.
Or I would Toyota. You could probably do a 2J. Yeah.
Okay. So, but are we talking like blowing the budget out of the water type shit? Like $80,000 bill to go 8s? Probably.
That's a good one. You can admit, because you have to,
Right.
Yeah.
So we have a platform that I can guarantee a money
motor
and an
itself.
outcome.
Motor itself or car, like the
everything. Because the Gen 2 Mustang is, the Gen 2 F-150,
Yeah, if I'm wrong or if I missed it, let me know in the comments.
Yeah. Let us know in the comments what
you think. There's a lot to think about right now.
Right. There's a lot of shit happening.
But I think I would say a Honda, but I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
that's true though. That's a good question.
When we start talking about Gen 2 architecture, how great it was, nothing can beat it. Every time I bought a Gen 3 Mustang to R&D.
Yeah.
I bought it. It was the first manual 19 that had a Lund tune on it. So I was like, okay, cool. I hated that fucking car, bro. It would just, I'd be sitting at a light, and I'm like, what the hell is that? The car has a phaser oiling issue. A lot of Gen 3 Mustangs and F-150s have phaser oiling issues from the factory. Gen 2, it just didn't care. It just idled. It just revved. It just did what you told it to do. Gen 3 was like, I might shift, I might not shift, I might idle, I might not idle.
Yeah.
So once you are spoiled in the Gen 2 architecture, you know it intimately, meaning you see the shift schedule, you see the clutch fill times, you see all of the torque tables, all of the stuff. You're like, I know this.
Yeah.
And then you see Gen 3 come around and just fuck it up. And you're like, damn, why'd you do that? So then I can't imagine what Gen 4 is looking like, 24 Mustang with 2 fucking cold airs, 2 throttle bodies.
Yeah.
The fuck you doing 2 throttle bodies going into 1 manifold? Like, who the fuck does that? 2 throttle bodies into 1 manifold. Like, don't GTRs have 2 throttle bodies and they go into a different bank and then they mix in the middle or something like that? This bitch goes into the same spot, like in the front. And I'm like, why'd you what the fuck did you do that for? And I'm blown away that people are like, oh my God, more power. And I'm like, why don't they just put 1 big ass throttle body in the front? Wouldn't that have been like a lot easier?
Yeah.
It's just weird So I think they're just doing things to be in compliance, to be, I don't know, make it harder to tamper. And it's just like, Gen 2, bro.
Gen 2.
Gen 2 all day.
Keep it simple.
You'd get in one. Like if you got into a Gen 1 Mustang, you'd go, cool car, whatever. And you got into a 14 Mustang. Well, kind of solid rear axle, bumpy. It doesn't feel that great. Then you get into a 15. You go, this is a spaceship. Look at the infotainment. IRS. Soft ride, smooth, looks good, handles good. Like it was like a completely different, like it was a complete redesign. You know, since 15, they haven't really changed the body. It's all S550.
S550, yeah.
It's all S550. Even the S650, you could take the rear end, put it in. You could take the doors, put them in. So I think they're just living off of that until whatever the fuck they're going to come out with later. If they're ever going to come out with another Mustang. This might be the last one. Who knows? This body style.
Yeah, because after that, it might just be more like a EV type of
It's either
situation.
EV or they're going to make just curvier S550s. Look at the Fox body. The Fox body lasted from 79 to 93. They keep putting more bullshit on it. Who cares? Make it Aero. Oh, Aero, you know, and then they carried that Fox body-ish mentality all the way to 99.
Yeah.
Because it was kind of like a similar layout. So, you know, maybe Ford is going to do something similar because they don't want to retool and start from scratch. It is crazy. But Gen 2 architecture by far, because it just does so much. It just, even if you look at the GT500, it doesn't have DI. It looks like a Gen 2. That's why it's so good. I'm like, and they didn't bother even to change the nose. Like, could you imagine just a slap in the face to Shelby guys? They gave you a 20 GT500 with an old nose, 15 to 17 nose. The 18 nose? Nope, it's a 20, but it has a 15 to 17 nose. And they dared to say it's new. I'm like, come on. They just put a body kit on it. But it has Gen 2 architecture, meaning the computer, the way it's laid out, the valve, you know, no DI, DI. I'm like, wow, I wonder why they didn't put DI in that car. Because they just wanted to make power. They didn't give a fuck about emissions. They didn't give a fuck about anything. Gas mileage. They're like, bah, blower, Gen 2 architecture, go piece of shit DCT that you can't tune. Good job, Ford. Fuck me. Poor car.
So when it comes to the trucks, why do you think those guys like Midnight, they have like some of the fastest trucks in the country?
I think it's their work ethic.
Work ethic.
They just work harder than everybody else. They'll outwork you. So meaning they'll go to the track 50 times. They'll break the four-wheel drive hubs and may have new ones made that are thicker, wider. They'll find the failure points of these cars. They'll blow up a motor. They don't care. They'll put another one in it. They'll burn up a transmission, take it apart, put a new one together, put it in, see where it fails, over and over and over and over. And then they have a product along with the Lund tuning at the time, because I think they all now run Field Tech, which is nothing wrong with that. But when they were stock computers and 10R80, they were like building it every week. They were racing because it's hot down there. In Houston,
it's so
trucks are the shit. They just outworked everybody. And I mean, I hate to say it's that simple, but it's that simple. Like they worked harder than anybody to build fast trucks. If you were trying to keep up with those guys, you had to be at the track the same amount of times. You had to put the money, the time, the effort, the R&D in the trucks, and work with a tuner that's willing to guide you through all that stuff. So at the end of the day, they just outwork people. So for example, I love boxing. Boxing's great.
Same.
Boxing, my favorite sport. People make fun of Floyd. They say bitch, whatever.
Yeah.
No one to beat him. Yeah. He was going to the club, drinking water. He'd jog home from the club.
He still runs now.
He still runs now.
I actually saw him running in Miami. Like
no
when I was
shit.
there a couple of days. Yeah.
Right. So billionaire, outworks everybody, out hustles everybody, just beats you at everything because he works harder than you. Now, I'm a nobody in this game. I'm a nobody in the tuning industry, but I'm known. All I do is work. I don't fuck around. I don't drink. I don't party. I don't smoke. I don't do anything. I just work. So people like that do better in a shorter period of time.
Right.
That's it. They just work harder. And you got to give it to them. Their work ethic is ridiculous. And I go, when people say, what are you guys doing at midnight? Are you giving them saucier tunes? No. They work harder than you. You have a stock ass truck and you think a Whipple E85 and you're going to run 8s? No. That's not how it works. Look at what's happening right now with Cletus, right? He has a truck. and they put a built motor in it, built trans, Whipple, and it runs like a 950. What's wrong? Well, how come it's not running 8s yet? Midnight ran 8s years ago.
Yeah.
Mexico Racing League ran 8s years ago. So they just work harder. That's it. That's it. And it's nothing against Cletus and all those guys. They just, people say, what do you mean work harder? It's got to be lighter. Well, no shit, right? Does everyone that runs a fast number have stock doors? Does everyone that runs a stupid number have a stock hood, stock windows? No, they have Lexan, they have this, they have that. They make it a race vehicle.
Right.
So that's all they're doing. They're configuring the trucks to race. They're working they're probably testing right now. Like it's
100%.
it's 10. They're somewhere in a concrete pad somewhere testing the truck.
Right.
That's how they do it. If you're not doing what they're doing, you're not going to get there.
Yeah. And that goes with any platform. I think it just takes money to be fast or the fastest.
Don't you hate that though, that is the case, that even if you have, and I'm sure you know it in all platforms, the guys that have the most money don't know the most about the car. Like they just don't. They just have the money and they pay for the right people to build it for them. Then they get in it, run the number, and money wins.
Right.
So if you have someone that's willing to fund the effort, like look at pro mod guys. Most pro mod guys are millionaires. Okay, that car builds it's like $350,000 to build. Those are millionaire guys. Okay, do you think they know everything that's going on in that car? No.
Nah.
Do you think they know what bar angle it needs for drag radial versus a slick? No. They just go, I'm paying you to do that. I get in that bitch and release the button, and I want to win.
Yeah.
So that's not a bad thing. I'm because that person worked hard somewhere else,
Right.
to make that kind of money to fund his hobby. I never poo-poo that, but it does become demoralizing. Let's say for you or me who are knowledgeable on something, work really hard, and then someone just with more money beats you.
Yeah.
But you just kind of chalk it up to go, hey, he's got more resources. I can't hate that.
Right.
Get better, get more money.
Get more money.
That's all I said. Get more money, Alex, because like lately I've started to do less hands-on work on my cars.
Right.
And I work more on my business and what I do to have the experts. Like right now, one Fairmont is being built. The cage is being put together somewhere else. The Corvette transmission is somewhere else at an expert. I could have done that, but God damn it. It would have taken me 18 hours.
Yeah.
You know how it is running this stuff. It's a bitch. You need to become a project manager eventually and just make more money.
Yeah.
And that's the difficult part, making more money.
Yeah. It's tough, but you got to grind it out for a couple of years, if anything.
Absolutely.
You know,
so that's why they're fast. For lack of a better word, is they just out hustle you. And some people might hate hearing that because they're like, I work hard. Not like them. They live that shit. Live it every fucking day. So, and you got to give them their props because if they're willing to work that hard, they deserve the success that they have.
Do you plan on building a Coyote F-150 truck? Or?
So I had one. It's kind of a sore subject. So this shop, Power by the Hour, was going to make a single turbo kit for F-150s.
Okay.
Matter of fact, the owner owns a single turbo, 1,000 horsepower F-150.
Okay.
Beautiful truck.
Yeah.
You should have seen it. Gorgeous truck. So the cool thing about that kit is the turbo is mounted by the bed, all the way at the back, remote mounted all the way. So it has stock manifolds, stock motor, stock
Oil?
everything. Yeah. It's oiled, but it's got a scavenging pump.
Okay.
So it's got to have all that stuff feeding in and out. So it's got a pump feeding everything. And it was going to be badass. And he built this cool little manifold for anti-lag. It was so cool.
Yeah.
So I'm like, he's like, would you ever be willing to run this kit? Obviously, I have a YouTube channel. So I'm like, yeah, let's promote that. Let's push this product.
Right.
So I preemptively bought this F-150. I get it here. And after he puts it together and it makes 1,000 on the dyno on 20 PSI on a bone stock. I'm saying so bone stock, it doesn't even have oil pump gears or crank sprocket.
Oh, shit.
Sealed motor, boost, fuel, stock 10R80, 1,000, 20 PSI. So he's like, there it is. So that's why I say Coyote's top dog. So I was like, okay, cool. So he starts putting numbers together. And you know, the money, there has to be money in it. So he's putting numbers together. He goes, I can't make money on this kit. I go, what you mean you can't make money on this kit, bro? He's like, the kits that are out there, On 3, all these other companies, I'd have to price it at like $7,000. And bro, this is like a $12,000 kit with the quality of parts he has in it.
Right,
he doesn't want to give you like junk. He goes, and then who's my customer base?
Yeah.
F-150 guys.
Right.
There's no money in it. So guess who has a truck that doesn't have a turbo in it? I'm like, So I did NA stuff. I did the best I could, but luckily one of my buddies bought it. He was looking for a 10R80 truck. This one I bought it from New York, Albany, New York. And nice little truck. It ran a 12.2 NA on the street, draggy stuff, and just stock everything, just manifold and E85, because they're E85 compatible from the factory. They're flex fuel. That's the other thing about F-150. Ooh. Every F-150 is flex fuel compatible. That needs to be said. 11 to 20 to current trucks, you can just put E85 in it, and it has flex fuel logic built in, and it'll automatically switch the stoic, give you more timing, and run better.
Right.
So the problem is the moment you tune the truck, we retain that in there. The flex logic stays in there. But if you want to have a dedicated E85 tune, it's better to have a dedicated E85 tune and not live off of the flex tune that learned 85%. Why? We can shove more timing in it down low. Here's more torque. Here you go. Get after it. So that truck was cool because on E85, I didn't have to change the tune unless I wanted to go racing. And then I flashed a dedicated E85 tune, firmer shifting on the transmission, get the pressures way up there, slam in a gear, and it ran like a 12.2, pretty stock. So I just sold it to my buddy. He's going to single turbo it. Yeah. But I would have loved to gotten in that game, but I wanted to support my friend. Right. I didn't want to put a Whipple on it like every fucking YouTuber. Oh, another Whipple. Oh, another Whipple. Who cares? But I understand. The Whipples make good power, but I wanted to support my friend's business, but he saw there's no money in it. So I was like, okay, so I sold the truck, which sucks. I owned it for 2 years. I loved that truck. It was cool. Yeah. And I wanted to go racing in it, but if I couldn't run his turbo kit, I didn't want to run anything else.
Are those trucks good for, this is just like a kind of random question, but like, are those trucks good for like pulling anything?
They're trash, bro.
Okay.
I hate single cab F-150s as a driver.
Maybe you can get the best of both worlds if you want to tow your car behind.
If you have a super cab, four-door short bed. They call it a screw. Super cab, I don't know, regular bed or whatever. Those are great. If you want to turbocharge or supercharge those, run like a 10 something, you could take the family out in it. You could tow a boat. Everything's cool. The tuning, the weird thing about F-150s is you got to be careful if you supercharge it. So if you supercharge it and you're living at 10 PSI and then you're towing a boat up a hill, and you're giving it gas and it sees a lot of boost at low RPM, it's going to be bad. So you have to like lower the boost to like 8 so that when you're going up that hill, it doesn't make more than 6 PSI or whatever, because sometimes it makes 6 PSI at like 1200 or 2000 RPMs and it goes low spark to compensate and it drives like shit. That's why I tell people you have to kind of pick your battles. Is this going to be towing something heavy? Is it going to be a work vehicle? Is it going to be a toy? So a supercharged F-150 is a toy. Is not something you can tow a heavy boat with or a heavy car with, because the supercharger is going to stress the F out because you're making a lot of boost at low RPM because of the load.
You're putting a lot more pressure on
a lot more load. Yeah. It's just stressing the hell out, and it sees 6 PSI at 3,000 RPMs, and only bad stuff can happen. Turbo, totally different.
Yeah.
Turbo's totally different. Turbo, you could just leave it on gate, turn off the boost controller. It just coasts up the hill. So that's why I think turbo applications have their place, and I think they're probably better off in that application. With good fuel. But supercharged, high boost, towing stuff, I wouldn't recommend it.
Okay.
It's not a good daily. In my opinion, a single cab F-150 is an awful daily. It's just awful. I don't like it. It's just, you can't lean back. Like you can't do anything. And it's a truck. So you hit something, it feels like a truck. You turn, it turns like a truck. But if you go straight line, it's awesome.
Yeah.
You kind of have to pick your battles.
Because I'm like, damn, I didn't think about that.
We can go into trucks. Yeah, that's the thing. That's the problem with like someone like me. Like I can go into hours, education as to the truck market because I owned one.
Yeah.
And Gen 3 because I owned one. Gen 2 because I owned one. I went NA, I went boosted, I went, you name it. I did it all. The only vehicle I haven't owned is a 350.
350.
But I've driven a lot because the companies that I worked for had them. But that's the only one I can't give you intimate details on because I haven't really messed with it. But based on the customer's experience, I wouldn't boost it more than 10 PSI. Just leave it alone. And if you're going to want to make big power, 19 to 20, twin turbo.
That's it.
That's
simple.
And you're done. Easy.
So we've kind of gone through
everything except like super minutia things like the DI, like the valves, the design, the difference between a Boss and a regular, Gen 1. The Boss is basically a badass built Gen 1. We have a guy at our shop. He has a Boss 302 stock motor, made 1100 Gen 1. badass crank, badass rods, badass pistons, CNC factory heads, badass cams, badass valves. Boss 302 motors are the god tier Coyote motor for Gen 1. So if you see a Boss 302 around, that bitch is bad. It is a bad bitch. And if the guy knows what he's got in it, he's a twin turbo setup away from making 1100. He made 1100 on a stock ass Boss.
Yeah.
We were like, this thing is stupid. It just loves it. Obviously, oil pump ears and crank sprocket, that's always a given on these things. But the Gen 1 Boss motor is so badass. And that's like the outlier. Right. That's like the weirdo. Because nothing in Gen 2 or Gen 3 had a similar architecture that was better. Like Gen 2 GT, that's it. Gen 3, Predator is its own thing. Yeah. Voodoo's its own thing. But the Boss and the 11 to 14 GT motors were interchangeable. You can just put one into the other and it's just going to work. Right. Everything fits. Everything is, one has a Boss intake, the other one doesn't, but that's visually, that's it.
Yeah.
But like everything was just stronger on the Boss 2. And they only made them for 2 years, 12 and 13.
Oh shit.
Yeah. I always thought there was a 14, but there wasn't. So 12 and 13 Boss 302, different lights and tail lights on the 12 and the 13. 13 looks better, but they also had a Laguna Seca version, which was cool. Ooh. No rear seats, no badass front splitter, weird colored wheels. Boss 302 is like one of those bucket list cars. So is it 350. 350R, 19 to 20 350R, Boss 302. Ah, boy, and what else? I think that's it. I already have a GT500, so I'm good.
So what is the greatest Mustang of all time to you then? Of all time.
Any generation?
Any generation, you could pick one.
Celine S351.
Celine S351.
1999 Celine S351. Now, people are going to go, oh, that's fucking stupid. Okay, shut up. So this is what I'm going to tell you.
1999?
1999.
Was that
Celine S351. It's not a Ford vehicle, really.
Okay.
It's Celine.
Right.
They put a 351. Remember, in 99, they had overhead cam engines. No, this thing had a pushrod 351 with a blower and a T56. It was badass. It was like a low 11-second car, high 10-second car in 1990. Let's go. Celine, 1999 Celine S351. Bro, badass.
Oh, I was thinking about the S7.
No, come on. That
was in Bruce Almighty. I think. I was like, I heard Celine. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, the Celine S351 to me, as a kid, was just so badass, badass, right?
This is like okay, yeah.
That's what you're looking at. Let me see which one you're looking at.
This is like a
bro S351, 351 with like some weird blower, 9 psi or whatever it was. Dude, T56, 351. That thing was a boost E85 and a clutch away from being like a high 9-second car. Badass for its time. In 99, we were before the Cobra, before any badass shit. The S351, to me, I would look at magazine articles and I'm like,
it looks like a magazine car. Like when you see like,
I'm like, what the hell is this thing? And they had a yellow one that the exhaust came out at the center like a ZR1 does.
Oh,
bro, it was so bad. And you can't touch them now for like under 50. Back then they were 40, which is expensive or whatever.
How many were made?
I don't know, but I know that there's a lot of Celines that had a 281, which is an overhead cam engine. It's just a body package. Okay. But the S for supercharged 351, in my opinion, is the baddest motherfucker ever made, period. And I understand people say, what about the Predator? No. Do your research, look up a 99 Celine S351, and if you don't appreciate it for 1999, what that car was
at that time.
For that, you're 30, 32?
32.
How old are you in 1999?
I was probably
25 years ago.
9. I was born 91, so I was probably like 8 or 9.
Yeah. Okay. So there you go. So imagine 8 or 9, like a high 10-second, low 11-second Mustang was around.
Yeah.
But when everything was running 14s or 15s back then, oh, dude, it was so badass. Now, if you were to say a production car, meaning came out of Ford, it's tough to beat the 1314 GT500. So the GT500 made 650 plus horsepower in 2013, 2014. TR6060, 200 miles an hour, top speed. It could go the quarter in the 11s easily. The 1314 GT500, in my opinion, is the last true, I don't want to say muscle car, because people get confused as to what a muscle car is. But Ford's version of muscle, think about it, 600 horse, 600 torque, 200 miles an hour, in a coupe that's stick. That's unheard of.
Yeah.
And that was in 13, 14. I think that was the last great, I own a 14, so I'm a little biased. But I think that was the last great production Mustang. Correct. Because after that, you got, don't get me wrong, they're fast. GT500s and 250s. But they're not bruisers. They're not raw. They're very refined. They're very smooth. This thing, you drive it, you're like, I'm going to fucking crash. And it's cool. So I think the 13, 14 GT500 just is that, muscle, brutish. Like, that Mustang is the only Mustang that'll make 1,000 horsepower, 1,000 torque.
Right.
No Mustang does that. No Coyote does that. Coyotes go 1,000, 750 torque.
Right.
GT500s, 13, 14?
Supercharged?
Okay. TVS, 2.3 liter, 1,000. My car made, with a TVS, it made 990 and like 900 torque. Then with a 4.5 Whipple, it made like 1,100. It was so stupid.
Yeah.
Because it's an overhead cam motor, 5.8. So you're like, wow, this thing is just bad. So that it has the torque and the higher horsepower capability.
Right.
But that Trinity motor, it was great. It was just big and kind of like, if you take apart a Trinity motor, there's just so many pieces. Ask me how I know. The people that know about my motor, it's just holy shit, there's a lot of pieces to this thing. Lifters and just dumb. But when that sucker's working right, dude, 1314 GT500 is the best production car, in my opinion, for Mustang. And the best Mustang overall, period, was a Celine S351, which I still want one day.
Nice. I'm glad I asked that because I never, I think I might have seen it because of the kit. It looks pretty familiar. But back then I used to see Mustangs all the time in magazines because I told you my dad had a Fox body. So he used to have magazines.
So the Celines from his era, my era, like the Fox body Celines, the SSC, I think they're called.
SSC.
I think they were SSC. They were supercharged, low run Celine Mustang. And there was like less than, I think, a couple hundred made. Right. But that car never appealed to me. I didn't like the white wheels. I didn't like the weird color. I didn't like it. The 351 looked fast sitting there.
Yeah.
You're like, man, this bitch looks bad. So if I can find a black one.
Ooh.
Black one would be stupid.
Yeah.
Stupid.
Black is the way to go.
Oh my God. I'd love it. Don't get me started on 351s because I talk about it sometimes and then I start looking because I want a Viper one day. But when I see an S351, I'm like, man, that Viper is going to have to wait because Vipers are going up all the time. It's like 90, 100, 110, 100. I'm like, fuck all that, So once I start talking Celines, I'm like, I might go on Facebook Marketplace and start looking like an idiot. Right. So I try to stay away from that stuff.
So I wanted to ask you a question based off of your live as well, because you had a very good point, and you kind of made it clear that people don't know what a true streets car is. So what classifies a street car?
So a street car needs to be able to drive and race on fuel you can find on the street.
Okay.
You can't find ethanol 1R, methanol on the street. That's not a street car. Right. I don't give a fuck if it runs on 87 octane to and from the track, and then at the track you put methanol in the bitch. Now it's a race car.
Yeah.
So to me, a street car, the true definition of a street car is it does street car things. You could take a top fuel dragster, put ethanol, pump gas, and drive it down the street. That doesn't mean John Force owns a street car. You need to be able to have all the amenities work. If it came with power locks, they gotta work. If it came with power windows, they gotta work. If it came with AC, it has to work.
Right.
And it should be able to run the number on Pumpy 85, I'm okay with because you can get it on the street. That is the truest definition of street car. These guys that show up to these tracks and they go, street car, no plates, no interior, Kirky seat, fuel tech, 9-inch with a spool, no HVAC, windows with that fucking net and the big fucking rib shit. And I'm like, what are you talking about, street car? That's a race car. You have race car stuff in that stuff.
Yeah.
I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to say, see, there's racing around here. See, there's racing around here. So you have to, they want to make it seem like it's like, oh, it's only a street car. Pfft, your race car versus my street car. Bro, your car runs 4s in the 8th. That's nothing street about that. There's also a class called all steel, all glass. I think every street car has to have all steel, all glass.
All steel, all glass.
Meaning ASAG.
Right.
The glass that came with it, the steel that came with it. If you have a front nose that comes apart and it's fiberglass, not a street car.
Front nose that comes,
Zeused up.
Yeah, low.
That's a race car. That's race car shit. That's race car shit. Street cars have a hood and a prop or struts. It has to be configured for the street and, more importantly, has to be legal for the street.
Okay.
If it's not legal for the street, it ain't no street car.
Right.
I don't care what you say. So
Right.
I know there's bending of the rules and stuff, but that's my definition.
Mm-hmm.
Some people say, as long as it drives on the street, it's a street car. Cool. I think that's a race car. If you can't get the fuel on the street, and if it doesn't come with all the amenities that it came with from the factory,
Can you have a parachute still in the street?
it's not legal if it covers your plate, right?
True.
Right? If it covers
Yeah.
your plate, it's not legal.
Right.
You can't have anything that obstructs the plate. We're talking street, so we're talking street car rules, right? If you're saying street car rules at a Texas 2K, guys, those cars,
I think that's what it is.
that's the problem.
Yeah.
That's the problem because they say street car. Do you know that I entered the street car class like 4 times and not once did they check my car? Not once did they check my car. They were just like, and I ran 9s, 8s, and they're like, whatever. Now you got to have a certain tire. You got to have a certain safety equipment. Wait a minute. It's a street car class. Why do you have to have all this equipment for a street car class?
Yeah.
Oh, you need race equipment for a street car. Got it. It's a race car class. You just throw the name street in there
Right.
to say tire, lights, to say it's legal-ish on the street, which I'm okay with. Nothing wrong with that. You're asking me what a street car is? That's not a street car. My GT500 is not a street car.
Okay.
No HVAC. No HVAC. No, and it has a spool. And it has a face-plated T56. You know, if it runs on ethanol 1R, not a street car. My Fairmont, not a street car.
So because you have a T50
Face-plated.
Okay.
Meaning no synchros. So then it goes into
Right.
gear. So it's only good when you're at watt shifting. It does well. So that's not a good street car.
Okay.
It's not synchroed. It makes all. You have to drive it a special way. You take a turn, the spool locks up, and the car bounces.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
like, this is not a street car. The first to say my GT500 is not a street car. Neither is my Fairmont. So I'm not a hypocrite. You know. So people say, is this a street car? No HVAC. It has a. Okay. Have you ever driven in a car with a cage?
Have I ever driven
In
one
a car
or
with a cage?
driven in one?
Driven in one.
Have
Like
I
a
driven?
10-point cage.
I don't think so. Honestly, no.
So when you're driving a car with a 10-point cage or 850 legal cage, you feel like if you get into an accident, it'd be worse for you because that cage is designed for you to, in case you roll over, you know, everything's stiff. But if a car hits you from the side, right, in the street,
Yeah.
that cage now becomes dangerous.
Right.
Because the street car has airbags and all this crap to protect you. So when you remove that and start putting, I'm talking modern cars,
Yeah.
and you put cage and stuff thinking you're safer. No, you're not. And then you bang your head around all the time. You're driving, chilling. What happens if a car hits you and you bang your head up against all the bars? Dude, not a good time. I hate the cage in my GT500. Because I'm like, it's a race car. I have a Fox body. I'm never putting a cage in it. If I go to a test and tune and come back, I'm not going to put a cage in it.
Right.
Why? So I can be legal for the track where I race? No. Street car.
Street car.
100% street car. The Corvette, street car. No cage, no nothing. Everything works. Dude, I get in it. Everything works. AC, windows. I'm like, wow, this is a street car.
Yeah.
Like, I know a lot of guys that build a car that makes 1400 wheel, dumb shit, parachute shit, and then they look at a 800 horsepower Z01 and go, that bitch is bad. And then look at the car and go, fuck, I can't drive that anywhere. You know, it's just stupid.
It's not practical.
I think once you can't drive it in a I don't know, common like amount of time, let's say like at least 2-3 times a week, and you can't get the gas at the pump, it's not a street car to me. That's all. And again, if it's to you, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not you. Fuck it.
Just wanted to clarify that because there's a big misconception with that.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of gray areas with that as well. Especially when you go to Texas and see all these cars racing in the street. You see it on YouTube and it's
Street
like, is
car.
that really a street car or does it belong at the track? And you know,
They I think there's different definitions for everybody.
Yeah.
My definition is that.
Okay.
If your definition is I can race it on the street and then drive it home, then that's your definition.
yeah, right.
That's cool. I think that's crazy because you could do that with anything.
Yeah.
You could do that with anything. So it doesn't mean it's a street car to me. To me, as a 46-year-old man, the last thing I want to do is smash my head on a cage, not have AC in Florida, and have to get special fuel to drive my car.
right.
That's all.
So what I want to do is answer some,
Sure.
ask you some questions from
Yeah,
you.
man.
Will the B58 engine become the LS of Euro cars? Just shoot a B58 in it.
Yeah, meaning would that be the future common swapped engine because it's so robust?
Yeah.
Like, do you see yourself in the future B58 swaps and everything? Mm-hmm. Probably, because if it makes that much power easy, absolutely.
Yeah.
The swap is determined by how easy it is, to make power. LSs, LS swap, LQ4, LS3, LS1, 2. Put a head, a cam, power.
Yeah.
B58, narrow, turbo, tuning's available. Why can't it be a swap motor? Could be.
Valid.
For sure.
You have 1 weekend to build a fast car. What car and setup are you building? Which I think we kind of covered, no?
No.
What car and setup are you building? I mean,
For what? Are we drag racing? Are we competitively drag racing?
It's a vague question.
Gen
I'm just
2.
going based off our conversation.
Then Gen 2 is probably going to be the answer because it's what I know. It's the easiest to build, and I know what I can get out of it based on my experience.
Your
tuning
experience
them.
with the build,
Sure.
right? Why GTR owners think Coyote copied them? Did we actually speak about that on the podcast?
No,
or
before.
Okay, so
you had a podcast with who was it?
Workhorse Performance.
Workhorse Performance, and they said Coyote's pretty much copy the GTR.
Just like that too.
So I went, okay, no. Then they said something about, again, I saw clips, so there must be a bunch of context behind that. They said, dude, we put the boost on the dyno, followed the same exact pattern, man. And I was like, well, that is your boost controller, right? So let's say you ramp in, let's say you have an AMS 2000, you can plot with little dots how you want the boost to come in.
Yeah.
So if you have a similar boost controller and you command the boost to come in at the same time, it's gonna trace a similar way, regardless of the combination that you have. Maybe they meant that the same power at the same RPM. I could understand that, but then did it make it at the same boost? So in terms of copying, I think they share a similar architecture. Twin independent variable cam timing.
Right.
But one has a big V6, what is it, a 4-liter V6? And the other one has a 5-liter Coyote. But the Coyote really makes up for the lack of displacement when it comes to the airflow. That's what the Coyotes make power.
Yeah.
Airflow. It's a very efficient air pump. Air in, air out very efficiently. So depending on their boost curve that they had plotted into their boost controller, of course, it might match the boost curve the GTR did. But since I wasn't there to see what was happening, I just thought it was funny. I don't dislike it. They're great guys. I just thought it was funny to hear the controversy behind it. And I'm like, there's no controversy. They're not saying anything wrong. I think people are just losing their mind because they just hear Coyote copied this and they just...
It was the cam phasing and the chopping as well.
The chopping and cam phasing Coyote did first. Let's be honest about that. Ford Racing, back when it was Ford Racing, had a Pro Cal tuner. That Pro Cal tuner was Ford's aftermarket tune. You could buy it from Ford. In 2011, you could buy a cam loped idle tune from Ford in the Ford Pro Cal tuner. In 2011, when did the GTRs come out?
2008, I want to say.
They came out in 2008?
2007.
Okay.
Or actually, production's 2007.
So when did Motec start shopping on those cars?
That seemed like it was pretty recent.
Right.
Yeah.
I haven't heard. Like every single time I went to 2K in the last 5 years, they just idled soft.
Yeah.
And now they go blah, 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 blah. Why? So in 2011, Coyotes were chopping it up from Ford. And Boss 302s, you're reminding me now why Bosses are badass. Boss 302s came with a different key. Like the Hellcat has the red key. Boss 302s came with a red key. When you started it with the red key, it chopped. Dude, the Boss 302 with the regular key, chilling. When you take the red key or the race key, it idled different. And people were like, and it had like weird downshift characteristics. It was so cool. So no, the Coyote did not copy the GTR in terms of the chop. Maybe they want to say about the overhead cam stuff, but let's be honest. Overhead cam stuff was in Cobras in 03, 04. Overhead cam stuff was in GTs in 96. So overhead cam Ford stuff was around before that version of the GTR had their overhead cam stuff.
Right.
So they didn't copy, but I'm sure they learned. Like, okay, what came first? Okay, when did the 2JZ come out?
The 2J?
The first 2J?
Probably in 93.
90 what? 5?
I think 93.
Okay, 93. When did the Nissan version of the straight six come out?
The Nissan
version. The GTR? Don't they have like a RB whatever the fuck?
Yeah, they have the RB. The RB25.
When did that come out?
Oof. I want to say before, but because they were those
so
weren't
did
sold over
Supra
here.
copy the RB or the RB copy the Supra? Right. They learned from one another. They go, man, that looks like it's working.
I don't want to be the one to answer that because I'm sure there's somebody in the comments that knows.
Oh, they had one in Japan, one of one. So you can look at it like, hey, that manufacturer's doing something that works. Let's try it.
Yeah.
I don't doubt that they did that, but Ford did have dual overhead cam architecture in the Cobra and in both Cobras, 96 to 98 and 0304. So you can say chicken or the egg, which one came first? The Ford did dual overhead cam stuff first.
What happened between Ken and Lund?
Yeah, that's the guy who trained me. I told you that story off camera.
Ah, okay.
So you know.
Yeah, I know. Somebody said Mustangs versus BMW, which we pretty much, I mean.
Look, I'm not going to want to, if I'm a Gen 2 owner that makes 1,000.
Yeah.
I don't want to race an all-wheel drive BMW that makes 850. Right? Because I'm gonna get beat on the street.
Yeah.
On the street, I'm gonna get beat. At the track, totally different. Track, we got grip. I got my money in the rear-wheel drive guy. But on the street, tough to beat anything all-wheel drive.
Yeah.
Like anything all-wheel drive. I used to hate those DSMs back in the day. Because them bitches would go.
Yeah.
I was like, what's a Plymouth Laser? And then I'm like, oh, it's a DSM. I didn't know Plymouth Laser was a DSM. So, anything all-wheel drive is going to have a really good shot. That's why I think the most deadly combo right now that should scare the shit out of everybody is an all-wheel drive badass Honda Civic.
Yeah.
Like an all-wheel drive Honda Civic is
K-Series?
serious. Like you don't really want to fuck around with that thing on the street. The problem is the consistency, right? Like the shifting, the GTRs are going to do what they do.
Right.
BMWs are going to do what they do. The Honda, you got to shift it. So that's probably the only variable. But in terms of potential, that's the street car king, in my opinion. Like little, high revving, high boost, and all-wheel drive. I've got my money on that for sure. But I understand. That Mustang versus BMW, it depends on what you want to do. But I think an all-wheel drive BMW on the street is always more desirable than a rear-wheel drive SI50, for sure.
On an IRS suspension Coyote Mustang, will a blower or turbo car go faster on the street quarter?
I would say a turbo car because you have boost control.
Okay.
So if you're rolling, you can set it up so that it doesn't hit. You can set it up a mile an hour. You can set it up by time. You can even have a scramble button. And then just let's say, here's another 5. Supercharger.
Yeah.
So it's the configuration and the adjustability of the turbo that always gives it the advantage. Always gives it the advantage on the street. For line on line, there's a reason they penalize turbo cars. They're just better. They're just more efficient.
More efficient.
That's all.
Somebody said, I know you won't answer this question. I'm not sure why you said that. But how did Lund run 6 seconds through a Ford stock ECU, which we spoke about before, but I guess the stock ECU portion we really didn't. So
a lot of people want to know like what software we use and all this stuff. Understand this, the stock ECU is controlling everything in the motor, but we do have auxiliary inputs. Like we have a boost controller.
Yeah.
We have a 2-step. We have certain outputs that we can monitor in the transmission that gives us data. We have a traction control device. We have all this crazy stuff all over that usually is incorporated in a Motec, a Fuel Tech, or a Holley. It's all in it.
Yeah.
We just used the stock ECU to control the fueling, the shifting, the cam phasing, because we do have variable cam timing on that car. And that's where we shine. Because name any other company that you can buy a Gen 2 Mustang and go from stock to 6s with the same tuner, same computer, same everything. None. There are none. That's the one.
Yeah.
We did it with the S550, Mexico Racing League, Brian Luna. He did it. See, he was the first to go 6s. He did put a power glide in it, but we wanted to do it with a 6 already. With the Turbo 400, we would go 2/10 quicker. Tomorrow, we'd go 640s. But we don't live in that sandbox. We live in the stock ECU 6R80 sandbox. Okay. So there isn't any magic. There's just hard work. Junior does nothing, but Senior built that car. Senior sacrificed a lot to build that car, like a lot. Family time, like, strained relationships.
Yeah.
Junior, same thing. Then we had to go up there and test. And look, it's all hard work. So the same way Manuel goes fast in his F-150s, Junior goes fast with the stock computer. He's working. I can't give you the details, but I can tell you that it's just hard work.
Hard work.
Hard work. a lot of doing it over and over and over, finding a fault, finding a parameter you didn't know about, testing it, breaking the car, doing that all over and over and over. We broke, dude. We I don't even want to tell you how many motors we went through, but not because of the tuning.
Right.
But we learned a lot through that process. Another bug missing.
No, it's probably the same one.
Okay.
Ask him forged line wheels or Shelby wheels.
Shelby wheels or forged line wheels? It depends on the application, but Shelby makes some really nice Alcoa wheels for the 13 and 14 GT500. If you look them up, they're badass. But they're expensive, and I think a lot of people have had them. But I like the Forged Star CF10s that are on my Corvette. I like the Forged Star F14 on S197s, and I like, believe it or not, the Forged Star drag pack on S550s. I like Forged Star stuff.
Okay. Best supercharger / fuel system for a Gen 3 Coyote for drag racing.
See, I like that for drag racing. So if you want to go drag racing, he said Gen 3?
Yes.
Okay, so fuel system, 4 Innovations Level 2. The 4 Innovations Level 2 comes with 2 285 or 2 295 pumps. It has an FC2 controller, so you can control both pumps and trigger one off of a Hobbs. Fuel rails, ID 1300s, and a Whipple. Second gear leave. And get the transmission built by midnight. And that car should be an 880 car. Stock motor.
880 stock motor.
Stock motor.
That's crazy.
It's a 880, 890 stock motor, no problem. 20 something PSI.
Yeah.
Obviously, you got to make it light. You got to get axles, da da da. But he said fuel system and supercharger. So I said 4 Innovations fuel, 1300s, E85, Whipple, Gen 5, 3.0, midnight trans, drive shaft, axles, wheels, tires, all that stuff. It should go 880, 890, no problem. We went 790 with that combo. Damn. But light. The car was light, super light. So I don't think we can do that again because we were willing to blow it up.
Yeah.
We're like, fuck it. Let's see if it blows.
Let's see what happens.
We went 790. We're like, I think we're one of the few 7-second 10R80 cars. There's a lot of Turbo 400 Gen 3 Whipple cars, but not many 10R80 cars. I think we're the only one, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe one or two.
Yeah.
I haven't kept, how there's records and sheets everywhere. we're one of them. Let's just say that. We're one of them for sure.
All right, last question here. Ask about remote tuning on 2010 GT500 and what owners need to get Lund tuned.
Very nice. So we talked about what makes Coyote great.
Yes.
One of the best things that makes Coyote great are the wideband. So the wideband comes stock on these cars 2011 and up.
Okay.
2010 they didn't.
Gotcha.
So 2010 you can tune a car based off of O2 voltage, but that's some hack shit. So we're like, we'd rather you have a wideband in it.
Okay.
So this is what needs to happen if you want a Lund tune on a 2010 GT500. You have to buy a Lund Racing N gauge. Good luck finding one. The manufacturer went out of business. But if you find one, great.
Yeah.
You find a ZT2 box. A ZT2 box is an auxiliary box that plugs into the N gauge that has a wideband on it.
Yeah.
So you put the wideband in the pipe, you plug that into the N gauge. Now it reads air fuel in the N gauge and you can data log it. And we can tune you with a ZT2 N gauge on a 2010 GT500. Hell, any GT500. So it's just an I have one on my Corvette. I have a auxiliary AFR gauge because the Corvette is dumb. It's such a stupid car, but it's like so stupid that you overthink things.
Yeah.
If you learn on Coyote, then you go back to LS, you have to like chop half of your brain off and go, oh no, you're overthinking this, Alex. This is a dummy car. Here, just hammer this, hammer that. It likes fuel and it just makes power. Okay, cool. Coyotes are like, no, I want 2%. If you give a Corvette 2% fuel, it adjusts 10%. You give a Coyote 1% fuel, it takes 1%. The adjustment is line on line with what you want. So the command is usually, the output and the command are usually the same. So the wide bands from 11 and up allowed us to go wide open throttle and see air fuel at wide open throttle.
Yeah.
Whereas others just go static and you don't know what it is.
Right.
You have to have an air fuel source plumbed in. The ZT2 and the N gauge are the way. And that's why Coyote is so great. Chevy did not have wide bands in their stuff until like recently, like Global B, CTSV, new Corvette. They didn't have wide bands.
Yeah.
They still had to analog in shit. That's why I'm like, bro, fuck that. This thing has wide bands, stock, 2 of them. And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah, like the tuning on this is phenomenal. There's so much data. And that's, I think, the biggest difference between this and other platforms. The amount of data this thing spits out at you, if you know how to read it and if you have access to it. Because what you see like on HP tuners, SCT, is like 10% of what the car can spit out. The car can spit out, if you know how to dig for it,
right?
Hard work. You got to have special stuff. You can go, oh my God, I know there are like 32 tables this thing references all the time.
Yeah.
And it stacks it like a deck of cards all the time, doing this. And if you don't know how that works together, you're going to be lost. It's either 16, 32. I forget. I don't care. My brain's fried, but it's sampling different torque tables, different spark tables, different cam position based on pedal position.
Yeah.
Like you want to be freaked out about a thing I tell all my customers or fans. When you give it gas, what do you think the computer is doing on a Coyote? When you go like this, what are you doing? How about on any car? When you're doing this, what are you doing? When you're stepping on it, what should happen at the motor when I step on the gas?
I guess the
throttle body opens?
Up,
okay.
Yeah.
So Coyotes, this is not a blade opener. It's a torque requester. So I go like this. And the computer goes, he wants about 200 torque. And it opens the throttle blade a certain amount based on the math you put in to the tune. So if it's wrong, it'll be wrong. So if you have your torque tables dialed in fucked up and you say, I want what I think is 200 torque, but your math says it's 800 torque, it'll go wide open at 10% throttle.
There's no like TPS involved in that?
Oh yeah, there is, but your torque tables dictate everything.
Okay.
Meaning it's not a blade opener, it's a torque requester.
Gotcha.
So I tell people Coyotes are requesting torque. You're asking it to do stuff and the math makes it happen.
Right.
That's the delay. So once people kind of hear that, they go, oh, okay, it's not a blade opener. Because I've seen people in front of a car open the blade and it doesn't rev. And I'm like, why would it rev? Why would it rev? You're not commanding anything on the pedal. So if you're opening the blade without the pedal seeing input, it's not going to rev. It's just going to open.
Unless it was cable.
If it's cable, cable doesn't matter.
That's why my head was like going back to like the basics.
Drive-by-wire changed everything. Drive-by-wire, that little motor right there tells it how many degrees. And people go on a data log, hey, it's only opening 80%. I go, no, it's 80 degrees. They think the throttle should be 100%. I'm like, 90 degrees? So the throttle opens about this much. You want it to open 100 degrees? So it shuts again? So there's a lot of nuances and a lot of little things these things are doing, which are difficult to understand if you come from like an LS world or BMW world.
Right.
But my problem is I came from this world down to an LS world and I'm like, oh, fuck, I had to like unlearn a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So while difficult, and if you're not in it every day like I am, 8 hours a day for 8+ years, you're not really going to learn it like in a weekend.
Right.
That just doesn't exist. You have to be in it for years, every day, hammer, work hard to understand how to interpolate what the car is doing and understand why it's doing it. And I think that's what I'm good at. I'm good at explaining difficult things simply to the vast audience.
Right. It's definitely easy to retain the information speaking to you,
right?
Which is pretty cool. That's why I actually like when I can watching your lives while I'm either editing or uploading a video, whatever it is.
If I'm not yelling at the mic or something.
No, it's so funny. It's cool. You guys should definitely go check out his YouTube. It is comedy, but you also will leave that live stream learning at least 2 things. I would say something, but I learned a couple things watching your stuff.
I pissed off a lot of people recently.
It's good entertainment though.
And that's all I'm like, if you're talking about it, I did my job.
Yeah.
If you talked about it and you said something that you heard something that was you've never heard before, but it make logical sense the way I explained it, you go, fuck, I never thought of it that way. How come I never thought of it that way before? Shit. And that's how I retain information. Unless you explain things simply to me, I can't retain it. I need to be like on a whiteboard. Like
that's how I am.
My brain has to process it a certain way. Yes, I'm not that smart, but once I get it, I get it. And if you can't explain things simply, you don't understand it.
Right.
So that's just how I look at it.
What is next for you? You're planning on doing a couple builds, you said?
Yeah. So I have a Gen 1 Mustang, should be coming tomorrow or the next day. 2013 auto 6. I've never owned a 6R80 Gen 1 Mustang.
Okay.
So my goal with that car is to run 9.1 or 9.0 in the quarter mile with a VMP Gen 2R. I'm on this kick right now about superchargers and how the market is upselling you on something you don't need. So I'm going to say, watch me do it with this. And then it's going to make a lot of people rethink their builds in the future.
Right.
And that's one that's one I got to be careful with because I can piss off a lot of people that, fuck with us. But I don't know. I think it's cool to do anyway. And it's just only going to help me gather more data. So some people are going to say, well, how do you know so much? Because I put the money in and I work harder than most. Yeah. So I'm going to do that, do an NA stuff, just do a general Coyote go around. Because a lot of people are getting into these Gen 1s now. So I'm going to get that, run 9.1 eventually, but NA stuff. And then I have a Fairmont that I'm going to Coyote swap. So I'm going to Coyote swap that car and put a carburetor on it with a turbo. Okay. I will put a carbureted Coyote with a turbo on the Fairmont. And it's going to make people go, what the fuck are you doing? And I'm going to go, because I know how it works. I know how all this works. I know carburetors like the back of my, I get it. So a carbureted locked cam Coyote turbo that runs 790. Yeah. I think I could do it. So it's going to take a little while. So right now it's getting a cage. It's an old 79 Fairmont. I call it hush money. I got it when I was working at Bomberos. Good story there. And I think once I either he's going to help me with the transmission. We're going to do some funky stuff with 6R80s. He's going to have a 6R80 hopefully. But it's going to be all analog. No computer bullshit. The only thing computerized would be the spark stuff. But everything else is going to be super analog. It can't break unless the boost control will be a knob, like dumb stuff. Right. But I just want to see if I could. Yeah. And if I could get it to run a 7.9. It already went 850s, 870s before. So with no cage. Now cage and be a little safer. See if I can get into the 7s. So that's what's next. Gen 1, 9-second content, Coyote swap, Fox body, analog carburetor nonsense. That's going to be for at least a year. You'll see all that stuff popping up. And the GT500 motor should be coming back because I got hosed on that, but let's not talk about that. And I'm going to get the motor sent off to L&M in Pennsylvania. Once it gets built, it should make 1200, and I want an 8-second stick quarter mile with it. Nice. So, and I have the ZR1 that should come back, and I have a lot of car content. Yeah. That's why I don't make a lot of videos, because I'm setting everything up so that when it's all ready, I can go boom, 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 and just flood your pages with car content. And still maintain the live streams and a regular life. I don't know how, but we'll make it happen.
I look forward to all your builds and much more content. I'll still be checking in on the lives as much as I can. I usually pop in there and laugh.
Man, no, you're welcome there. People love you. They've been calling me to do your stream or podcast for a very long time. I didn't know who you really were until I started seeing the videos, because people were talking about it. Like, this kid looks super cool. Like, I guarantee we're gonna get along. So I'm like, okay, like we got along right away, because I'm like, okay, I kind of understand where you're coming from, and I like what you're doing. I like that you're showcasing shops and people that you feel are influential in the game. And I didn't know half of these shops existed until I saw your stuff. And I was like, super cool. So it's doing a good job. It's a lot of work, guys. It is not easy. I see the setup. Yeah. So give him a follow, give him a like, drop a tip, whatever. So the gentleman is getting after it. He's done many interviews while he's been in Florida. Give him a like and a follow and a watch and a share. That's going to go a long way. Anyone that watches my stuff, please follow him. Do what you can to support him. He's one of the good ones. We talk about these people out there. He's one of the good ones for sure.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I don't think anybody's ever said to follow, but
what, bro?
Well, because obviously they're watching they're watching on my platform, but it's like people kind of fail to realize also sometimes that like they're watching because of you. Like, they're watching the episode because of the guest.
Right. And if people click, and let's say I have 10,000 people click on this video, that'll be 10 more thousand clicks and likes that you like and that you get, and it helps your algorithm, and it helps because we're all doing this for a living.
Right.
So if it doesn't pay the bills, we stop doing it. No cool podcast, no cool stories, then it's over.
No, 100%. Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
So guys, make sure you guys like the video also. Yes. I never ever say that.
It's real difficult. You know how you get them to like stuff? How? You give stuff away.
Give stuff away.
That's what I did. I said, hey.
All right, so we're giving away
I say, hey, if this video reaches 2,000 likes, I'll give a random fan a shirt, a swag pack, blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden the likes come up.
So which one are we giving away?
I do the Gen 2. The Gen 2 is the one. If I was going to give one away, it'd definitely be the Gen 2.
What is this? How much is this?
Well, this is the F-150 variant, so I would think it's close to $8,000 or $9,000.
That's it?
That's it. Yeah, they're not crazy money.
Damn, Damn.
No. Don't get me wrong. This is a bare motor, meaning you still need an intake, you still need injectors, you still need harness. So,
but what can you make on this when you start putting stuff on?
1,000.
Oh, that's crazy.
I think it's 800. If you look in the Ford Racing catalog, because these are all spoken for. If you look in the Ford Performance catalog, I think a motor isn't close to 10. It's not 10 grand.
Wow. Damn.
No, it's not Germany and Japanese money. It's American money. Even though the dollar ain't worth shit no more, but it's still affordable for what you can do.
Yeah.
I think that's why the Coyote to me is like, given if you can dimensionally fit it in something, the best swap out there by far.
I agree. I said that on Joe's episode too. The fact that you can make power, that it loves boost, that has flow great.
I wish you can get in a fast Coyote, what I consider fast. Like, a high 3 second 60 to 130 Coyote.
3 second?
Yeah,
nah.
Dude, it's you feel like you're gonna die. You feel like you're gonna die. I'm dead. I'm gonna die. I'm dead. Yeah, dude. My GT500 went 4.3. I thought I was gonna die.
That's fast
and
too.
it was just blazing tire. I'm like, fuck this. It was stupid. I did it on an Instagram video, and I'm like, that was really dangerous. And I was like all strapped in, like, oh my god, and I'm like, that was so dumb. I'm never doing that again.
Not me. These cars definitely are aggressive, and they do kick out from what I've seen on plenty of Instagram viral videos or YouTube. So can you tell the viewers where to find you for those the people listening and watching who don't know who you are?
Sure. So on Instagram, you can find me at YDBT for life, YDBT, the number 4 life. On YouTube, 50 Alex, or just Alejandro Flores, like Lady Gaga, Alejandro Flores. On YouTube, you'll see my lives. I have over 1,600 videos on there.
Yeah, he gets to it.
Yeah, and it's not a big channel, but that's okay.
Get him to 100K. He's at 67.
That'd be nice. Get that stupid little plaque. I don't want you talking to me on Facebook. Fuck that. So that's it. Instagram and YouTube, that's where I make money. And if you guys could go check me out, check out the videos, leave a like. If you're a single girl that wants a fat booty or whatever, hit me up, whatever. So, I'm available. I'm available.
You're making me laugh too much, bro.
It's a good time around here. It's a good time.
Oh my God. Yeah. This, hilarious. So yeah, definitely go check out his YouTube. Subscribe to his content, and also make sure you give him a follow on Instagram as well. And yeah, I feel like there'll probably be a part 2 at some time in the future.
That'd be cool because we got a lot to talk about. Typically the first episode gets all the basic information out. Then the audience is going to go, man, I wish he went into this more. Into
100%.
this more. And then
there's too much to talk about.
And then if you come back another couple months later, or if we can meet up somewhere, not my little garage. Thank God. Thank you, Jake, for allowing it here, because my garage would have been a nightmare. People walking by like, what the fuck's happened to them? I'm like, shit. So no, he did me a solid. But no, I appreciate you coming down, man. Thank you so much. I'm going to follow your stuff. Hopefully you get more people wanting to come on the podcast because this is a networking thing. 100%. And a lot of people need to understand this is a networking thing. So your audience will match with their audience, and that's how you can either reach people you normally wouldn't. Yeah. And that's why I did the podcast, basically.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Make sure you guys like, share, comment, and subscribe. Hit that like button. And also make sure you guys turn on your post notifications as well on Instagram and YouTube, so you guys know when I'm dropping videos. I don't have a set time, so you guys always ask, when is this video dropping? When is this video dropping? If you guys haven't caught on, I usually drop on the 3rd post, but lately, since I've been so busy, I either drop one clip and post. So to make sure you're staying up to date with the content, just make sure you turn on post notifications. Keep it that simple.
There you go.
So until next time, guys, catch you on the next one. Peace.
See you later.